Good evening and welcome to the May 2023 meeting of the Cohasset Conservation Commission. I'm Tom Bell, acting chair of the commission, and we'll be running tonight's meeting as we implement the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act and the Cohasset Stormwater Management and Wetland Protection bylaws. We'll be operating tonight's meeting using the Zoom platform and ask the public who wish to speak to enter your questions, comments, or concern in the chat box. You must include your name and address to be called upon. Only those present this evening on behalf of the Conservation Commission or our Conservation Administrator, and Angela Giso, and the Town Conservation Agent, Charlotte Pechtel. I will now take roll call of the Conservation Commission and Associate Commissioners, which we don't have any of. Please respond by repeating your name and saying present. Will Ashton?
Will Ashton, present.
Tom Bell, present. Kathy Berrigan?
Kathy Berrigan, present.
Eric Eisenhower?
Eric Eisenhower, present.
Chris McFarland, the chairman, is absent tonight. And Chris McIntyre?
Chris McIntyre, present.
Thank you. We have a quorum of, I believe, 5. Is that correct, Charlotte?
Yep.
So we'll be taking all votes via roll call, with each commissioner answering yay, nay, or abstain. The first hearing this evening is RDA 2306, 97 Border Street, tree removal. Do I need to read more of that into the record, Charlotte?
Yep. Yeah, you read the public notice. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Let me call that up. Okay, so notice of public hearing, 97 Border Street, in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Cohasset Wetlands Bylaw and the Cohasset Stormwater Bylaw. The Cohasset Conservation Commission will hold a public meeting on Thursday, May 11th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. via remote participation on a Zoom platform for a request for determination of applicability, RDA 2306, for Philip and Kathleen Kaplan to remove one tree along the seawall at 97 Border Street. So with that, I'll ask whether they have representation that they'd like to promote.
Hi, Philip. Can you hear us?
We can. Let me fix the camera here a little bit. No, we don't. There is no other representation tonight.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
Philip, I can share my screen. Do you want to kind of just walk us through your submission? I'm going to pull it up momentarily.
Sure. So my wife is here with me as well, Catherine. Our home is at 97 Border Street. So to orient people a little bit, you know where the Border Street Bridge is. If you're coming over the bridge heading towards Situate, we're the first house on the right-hand side. And the reason for the request, and Charlotte, thank you for putting up the photographs. We have a tree that was here when we purchased the house back in 2015. That has grown significantly since that time. And we've been advised by our landscaper and the person who does the maintenance on the wall for us that it could be problematic in the future and compromise the wall. So as opposed to waiting for that to happen, we thought the prudent thing would be to remove the tree now. Our approach would be to have it hand cut. So our landscaping crew can do that. And I'm ready to answer any questions that people may have.
Charlotte, do you have any further information to provide to us?
Yeah, so they've also submitted a variance request, and I can pull up other pictures too, but we discussed whether or not it was feasible to plant another tree somewhere on the property. It is a little tight given the limited space that they have. You know, they have a handful of large oaks to the right side of the second photo, which I can pull up, and then a handful of cedars on the left side of the home in the second photo that are all on the ledge. So planting another tree is a little tight here, but I know Philip and Catherine are both willing to make a donation to the town tree fund if the commission agrees that's acceptable. But I can pull up other photos too, but it is sitting right on top of the stone wall and somewhat growing into the fence. So that's why they've submitted the request to remove it.
Charlotte, about how, Mr. Cantillon, about how tall is this tree?
Our estimate, we haven't measured it specifically, but our estimate it's probably above 15 feet tall.
And do you know the diameter of the base, the trunk?
No, not off the top of my head, but I think you can kind of, Charlotte, thank you. You can see from the pictures that Charlotte's showing, get a fairly good sense of the base.
What size is that pillar there? The fence post or whatever. Do you know? 6 by 6?
Yeah. it looks
No,
like
I-
6 by 6, don't they?
I'm not aware of that. The fence was here when we purchased the home.
Yeah, those are not 4 by 4s. They look like they're probably 6 by 6.
So it's, but maybe you'll give it 6 inches, probably less, but healthy. What's the problem with the wall? Is that a structural wall? Is it a retaining wall there? And is this growing into the top of the wall? Is that the concern?
Yes, it's a seawall that also is a retaining wall for the yard.
Do you have any idea how long that wall has been there? I know you just moved in, but
No,
so you're clearly within 2 areas of our jurisdiction, the riverfront and certainly the 50-foot wetland buffer here.
Also pretty much right on top of where the coastal bank probably is.
Right. Right. And are you aware that we generally do not allow disturbance or alteration of the vegetation in those zones?
Charlotte did make us aware that the commission would rather not do that, but again, we're looking at, potentially, the impact of the wall, and we wouldn't want to have, the wall impacted or the Gulf River impacted.
Charlotte, can you show us, you probably weren't able to take a picture from straight on here to see what size stonework there is in that wall. So if anybody, Mr. Killen.
Yeah, I think, well, it's zoomed out a little bit, but they do have a photo from the water side. Zoom in it. I know it's a little grainy, but
Can you zoom in on that by any chance?
sorry, this is a scan.
Yeah, yeah. So those are big stones. One of them looks like it must be 4 feet long and a foot thick or a foot wide. And is that held together with cement?
Yes,
Okay.
and we've had to have some repairs to the wall in the last 5 years. 5 years.
I know different trees have different root growth and some are, root systems are considered more aggressive than others, like willow trees. I know, maybe Eric, or does anyone know, are cedar trees, like, what are their root systems like? And are they aggressive? Do they have a tendency to, I'm reading just kind of offhand that they're not, they don't tend to damage structural stuff.
Tom, before we go any further, I'm going to recuse myself from this hearing for personal reasons.
Okay.
You're down to a quorum of 4. That's all right. It works.
Yeah, we're still good. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Eric, for that. Well, obviously the Gulf is saltwater, so I wouldn't think that the roots are reaching for that. So most likely that root ball is spreading towards the house rather than down the wall. Mr. Cantillon, did you have a certified arborist examine this?
No, we took the advice of our landscaper, who is Rick Kelly of Kelly Landscaping.
I see. And does anybody else have questions? Will? Kathy?
No, I don't.
my thoughts on this are that it does not look like it's posing a serious risk to anything. And because it's in the 200-foot or the 100-foot inner riparian zone or riverfront zone, and it's within the 50-foot buffer and at the top of the coastal bank, that there's really nothing that is screaming out to me that should be cut down.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the natural features of the waterfront, this developed area, this is like a, one standout tree, and besides providing shade or whatever, it's retaining soil there, preventing soil erosion. And I agree, it's not a very large tree, but I can't imagine that it's gonna cause any significant damage to the wall.
Looks like it's growing into the fence here.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is that it's not, there's no soil there. It's on top of rock. I don't see what benefit it is providing to the buffer zone. You know what I mean?
It's in the resource area as well. I mean, the riverfront is the resource area.
And it looks like it's not the only one. You want to go back a little bit, Charlotte? It looks like there's a younger cedar.
Yeah, there's one on the, I think this is the northern side of the property, unless I'm turned around. But yeah, there's a small cedar here. There's about 1, 2, 3, 4, I think, oak trees on one side of the property. And then the other side, you got more oaks and maples and a bunch of cedars behind it on this like ledge.
Well, this is an RDA, right?
Correct.
So, I mean, my feeling is that just given the proximity to the waterfront and the high visibility of it, I would say that, a request would.
Well, I think what we're deciding is whether it's within our jurisdiction and for an RDA. Is that right, Charlotte? That's
Correct. Yeah,
that's the
RDA.
first thing we need to rule upon is this.
Also, if the activity requires a notice of intent, that's kind of like at least with tree stuff, that's kind of like the main question. Because a lot of times, like, we know it's in our jurisdiction, we can see it right here. But yeah, we're deciding whether or not the proposed project requires a notice of intent.
Yeah, and based on that, that it's within several statutory zones that we have jurisdiction over, and there is no report from a certified arborist, I would recommend that you come back to us, Mr. Cantillon, with a notice of intent, knowing that we are reluctant in general, not specifically here, but in general, we're reluctant to allow the removal of trees within any of these zones that we have jurisdiction over, particularly the 50, the 100-foot riverfront zone, and the coastal bank. So it seems prudent to, if you want to go forward with this, that you return to us with a notice of intent, and it seems silly to flag these jurisdictional boundaries, but generally that's what we require, that they'd be flagged as well.
Okay, when you say flag the jurisdictional boundaries,
That
could
would
you
mean-
just educate me a little bit?
Yeah, that would mean that the top of the coastal bank would be defined by a licensed professional. The 50-foot boundary would be also flagged by that same professional as part of your notice of intent. And an arborist would have an evaluation of the tree's health. It looks fairly healthy to me, except for the place where it obviously rubs against the top rail here of your fence, which is, given enough time, that's going to ruin both the fence and the tree. So anyway, we do have jurisdiction. There are a number of issues that need to be addressed here, and at least I think you should come back to us with an NOI.
Okay,
I don't know how the other commissioners feel. I think now's the time to comment before we move on.
I agree with you, Tom. That would make sense.
Chris,
Yes,
Will, what do you think?
Yeah, yeah, we should do an NOI for sure.
and So-
Yeah.
just, I also want to be clear. I mean, we like the tree. You know, it's not a case where this is more of thinking about, you know, the infrastructure around the house as opposed to, you know, that's our intent. Now, I understand we have to come back with a notice of intent. But I should have started with that, you know, we enjoy the tree during the holiday season, we light it. But I understand the issues that you've raised, and we'll come back with what you've recommended.
Yeah, it is a nice looking tree, in my opinion, which doesn't count for much in terms of legal terms, but yeah, it's an attractive tree, I think. And anyway, so with that, Charlotte, what do we do here? Our next procedural move is to what?
It would be a positive determination, and then the option I think that's most appropriate is a +3 determination. The work described is within an area subject to jurisdiction under the act that will remove, dredge, fill, alter that area. Therefore, said work requires a notice of intent. The other positive options are talking about whether the area is subject to jurisdiction, the boundaries, is it in the buffer zone? So this is the one that applies to, you know, it's in an area of jurisdiction and requires a notice of intent. So that's a +3 determination.
Okay, so I would make a motion to require a notice of intent, a +3.
Mhm.
Do I have
+3 determination, yeah.
a +3 determination? Do I have a second for that?
second,
With a second, we'll go to a roll call vote. Will Ashton,
Will Ashton, aye.
Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Chris McIntyre,
Chris McIntyre, aye.
Tom Bell, aye. This vote passes 4-0 with one abstention. Is that how that works, Charlotte?
Eric did recuse himself, so it would be 4-0, I think, right,
4-0.
Kathy?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate your
You're
time.
welcome.
Sure.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Okay, moving right along, we're going to go to RDA 23-7. Let me read that into the record as soon as I call it up here. Beechwood Street. Okay, so we're going to open the RDA for 143 Beechwood Street. Notice of public hearings in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and Cohasset Wetlands Bylaw and the Cohasset Stormwater Bylaw. The Cohasset Conservation Commission will hold a public meeting on Thursday, May 11th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. via remote participation on a Zoom platform for request for determination of applicability 2307 for Jason Rockwood and Lisa Rockwood to remove 2 damaged trees from property at 143 Beechwood Street. So with that, Mr. and Mrs. Rockwood, do you have a professional that's representing you tonight? And if so, let's promote that person. And if not, we'll promote you.
Hi, Lisa, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. I don't believe, we do have a Total Tree engaged, but I don't believe he's gonna be on tonight.
That's okay. Yeah, Lisa, I pulled up the site plan. Can you walk us through your proposal? And then I can also share my photos as well of the trees on the plan.
Sure. Just for background, we purchased this home in January. So we are under some renovation. We're not expanding the footprint whatsoever. We're just making it up to date. So with that, we did have an arborist come through and give us an opinion. There's a lot of trees that looked unhealthy. Some were problematic from a power line perspective. They're close to the power line. One had been struck by lightning. So we noticed that some of the trees in the property were in bad shape and we wanted another opinion. So with that, that's how we came up with this plan. So we took a look at anything that was affecting or could affect people, the home, or power lines. And so that's where we came up with the red dots.
And I know this was from a scan site plan, so I'll just add that if you guys can follow my cursor here, this is the 50-foot buffer to the bordering vegetated wetland on either side of the property. So there's a BVW in the front of the property on the left and the right side with an intermittent stream. And so this line right here is the 50-foot buffer. So there are two trees within the 50-foot buffer that they're proposing to remove. I can show you guys photos. And then 4 here on, I believe, the eastern side of the driveway in the 100-foot buffer. So she has submitted a variance request, or they have submitted a variance request as well for the work in the 50.
Charlotte, can you show us a map that clarifies where exactly this property is so we can have some context for this?
Yes. Do you want me to pull up the state GIS maybe, or do you want to pull up
You know,
map or
yeah, near map would be, I think.
your map? Okay.
Would be our best bet here.
I guess while I'm doing that, Lisa, you said you had someone from Total Tree, you had an arborist from Total Tree, the 6 trees, and you said it was in his opinion that they be cut down?
Yes, he actually pegged more than that, but we wanted to prioritize. So that's how we came up with the 6.
While she's pulling this up, Ms. Rockwood, is the certified arborist also going to do the work?
Yes. If approved, obviously.
So zooming in a little bit, it's tough to see with the aerial imagery, but the BVW is on the southeastern side here in about this corner area. And there's an intermittent stream coming around the west side on the abutting property. There's a small BVW here. So 2 out of the 6 trees proposed to be removed were in the 50-foot buffer. You can see a few of them. There's one right here that's leaning slightly over the driveway. And then there's a black cherry tree here. I believe that is close to the existing septic tanks. And then some of the trees along the eastern side here, like, this big one. I'll show you guys photos too from the ground so you can see them. I think it's this one. There's one right near the shed that's practically on top of the shed. And then there's another one here. I think those are the 6 of them. But yeah, just to give you an idea reference wise where this is on Beechwood Street, it's right before the light between.
Could you zoom out a little bit, Charlotte? So
Yeah.
we can see the larger picture.
Yeah. So yeah, CJC is right here. So it's right before the light.
Nice. Yeah.
Crossing over.
Yeah, right. So obviously the assessor's map is, as usual, doesn't coincide with the actual property boundaries on the ground. You can see that some of the trees you were pointing at seem to be on somebody else's property, but as we well know, they have to shuffle these lots around to make them all fit. And so it's always a little bit confusing when you look at that assessor's map. You have to take it with a grain of salt. So, well, the first thing to clarify is really, it sounds like you recognize that we do have jurisdiction. You're talking about cutting trees down in the 50-foot buffer. Can you give us some idea of where the power lines are here, Charlotte?
Yeah. I'm going to pull up my photos. You can probably see them from the
Sure.
from the ground. So just to walk you guys through quickly, that's Beechwood Street. This is where the wetland is. That's where the wetland basically from the street view. So right up here, you know, you guys, the power line, there's actually, Lisa, I believe this is not National Grid's utility pole, correct? This is yours. It's connecting across the street to the primary.
Yes, that's my understanding as of recently. Which I didn't
Yeah,
know.
so at least with like this big tree, for example, the one that was struck by lightning, a lot of branches are directly over the lines. So that's one of the trees. So, yep, reference to the power lines. This tree right here, this one right here is the one that's leaning slightly into the driveway. This is the big one that was struck by lightning.
So is that one dead?
I don't believe so, but Lisa, I believe this one was definitely compromised, but it's not dead completely.
Yeah, it looks like it had 3 liters and that.
Yep,
lightning didn't
yeah.
knock it up much, did it?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Charlotte, in the scientific terms, could you define what a compromised tree means?
No.
Because, you know, not all bad trees are created equal. We're dealing
No, I
with
agree.
a
Yeah.
lot of trees here in different conditions. And
Yep.
I think it's unfair to everyone to have a blanket. We're gonna get rid of 5 because they're all bad, right?
No,
You have to
yeah,
go-
sorry.
You have to
That's
go
a gray
tree by tree, all right? Look at it and try to understand what the logic is for each tree to be worked on, okay? I mean, it's not near anything, all right? There are lots of trees like that in the forest.
I personally, I'm like the whole thing with the arborists and the tree cutting, I would like to see, you know, like some sort of documentation that puts their, you know, that includes their license and their professional opinion. Especially, you know, in situations where where they're within the 50, just their, you know, their word or whatever. I would like to see I would like to see a document. I mean, ideally,
I know
I would like a third party rather than the same company that's cutting it down, but I understand that's how they operate these days.
So Charlotte, I know that he did speak to you in office. Was there something else that I should have received from him in terms of documentation?
So yeah, for RDAs, it's kind of like a case by case basis, but at least for NOIs, for tree work, we've seen kind of like a written statement or summary from the certified arborist, just kind of summarizing the health of the trees. Didn't Andy put something together? I thought he did. It's not in the RDA, but I thought he was going to put something together.
Yeah, I thought that's what he dropped off. But if he didn't give it to you, I can ask him for it.
It wasn't this the letter summarizing the trees, was it? And it's signed, but I don't know. It doesn't specify who signed it. Hold on, I'm going to pull up your RDA. Just so you guys can see what I'm talking about.
While you're doing it, let's take care of something pretty simple. We do have jurisdiction. We, again, this would be something that needs to come back to us as an NOI. We're talking about a fair number of trees. We're talking about wetlands that may or may not have a current wetlands delineation, and therefore the boundaries of the buffers would be uncertain at this point. So keep looking, Charlotte. Don't mean to distract you, but
No, that's okay. I wanted to make sure I didn't miss it. This was the letter that I received, but I don't think this is from Total Tree.
No, that was our update.
Okay.
So that was
I did speak to a certified arborist, Gary at Total Tree. He did evaluate the trees. I mean, again, it was more just like an on-site discussion briefly, but he did say that at least the trees on the eastern side along the power lines, at least in his opinion, should be cut down. The one tree he was hesitant on was the black cherry. He wasn't sure about the root system potentially compromising the septic tank. But at least with these trees, looking at them on site, you know, he did say they should be removed. But again, I'm sorry, I didn't get anything
no,
documented. But at least the ones near the power lines, I asked him, can you prune instead of just cut? He said sometimes with those large side leaders, that could hurt the tree even more. So he said in those cases, with these specific trees, he did recommend taking them out rather than just pruning, but there are definitely a handful of trees on the property that probably don't need to be cut. They could just be pruned, especially the ones over the power lines. But yeah, this was the only tree that he was at least not, he didn't have a solid conclusion.
I think for me to proceed with this, I would like to have a more authoritative report on each tree, describing its situation, what's in danger, what's causing the damage, and what the alternatives are, whether we can be ignored or not. And also there's some of these that are involved with power lines, which I assume are National Grid responsibility for taking care of.
Unfortunately, on private property, yeah, if this pole was owned by National Grid, for example, they could definitely be under the exemptions for cutting or pruning the trees, but unfortunately, this one's not owned by National Grid, so it's up to the property owner.
Certainly one alternative is, and probably a wise one, given that this is in the forest, is to actually have underground electric service. Running a pole through a forest, a pole and line through a forest is a very inexpensive thing to do, but it's probably not the best solution for whoever, and obviously, Ms. Rockwood, this wasn't a decision that you guys made, but somebody made a bad decision to run overhead power here through the forest. A lot of people in town recognize that and wisely put their service underground, just to avoid local power outages for their own sake. So.
No, I'm happy to explore that.
I think we're talking about re-engineering the property, Mr. Bell. I think,
Yeah, right.
I think we have to deal with the trees here and decide what we do with the petition from the applicant.
Thank you, Eric. I stand corrected. Okay, so again, I think it sounds like we want to hear from more detail from the arborist. My own feeling is that the arborist should not be the person who is going to do the work. There's the potential, at least the appearance of conflict of interest here. They make their money by cutting down trees.
Good point.
So,
So can I use him for the opinion and then use somebody else to cut it down?
absolutely.
Okay, so. And then may I ask one more question? Sorry, I don't want to interrupt if there's. So this particular tree, it is growing into a power line. The root is coming out and it is over my septic and over my driveway. Is that something that we need to still get a second or another opinion on? I'm most concerned about this one, to be quite honest.
Is that the one that's on the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, sorry, this is the one that's like leaning over the driveway. At least in talking to the arborist, there's no roots that are going backwards towards the ledge. They're really just spacing out from either side along the driveway. He said it's probably due to when the original home was constructed and the ground was compacted in such a way where the tree roots couldn't break through. There could be underground ledge too, so it definitely reached out either way. He said with this tree in particular, the way it's leaning and it's going to keep getting bigger and bigger. He said the wind sail mass up here is increasing. And if you try to cut off some of these leaders, or side leaders, I asked about, obviously not the main one, but I said, can you cut off some of these more like side ones to try and teach it to grow the other way? But he said it's reaching towards the sun, because of all the other canopy behind it. So the large tree, it'll just keep getting bigger, obviously with, he called it like a wind sail mass, basically with more branches, more leaves. And he said over time, these roots won't be able to really hold down the tree. He wasn't sure about a timeline, but at least with this leaning tree, he said, because it doesn't have as solid of a base as some of the other trees, and it keeps growing diagonally, it could definitely be a safety hazard.
Two thoughts, Charlotte. One,
Mhm.
we need to document that for each of the technical analysis. And two, we consider whether we should not have an NOI. This is one heck of a lot of work going on inside the 50-foot buffer zone, which we normally would require an NOI in order to
Right.
proceed.
Yeah, this tree, let me just double check the site plan. This one I think is in the 100-foot buffer. Just double check. So the black cherry and,
Yeah.
uh,
Could you,
actually,
could you
I
point
think
out
it's
that
just
tree
one.
on, Charlotte?
Oh, no, it's two. Sorry.
Could you identify that leaning tree on this?
I believe the leaning tree is this second one.
Okay.
Where,
Um,
I'm sorry, I don't see where you're pointing, Charlotte.
sorry, can you guys see my cursor right here? Little arrow? No?
Second red from the bottom, Eric.
Yeah, so this
Okay,
is,
yeah, yeah,
this is
yeah,
50-foot
I got
buffer.
it, I got it,
Yep.
yep.
But I
Yep.
think,
Yep.
unless I'm mistaken, and Lisa, it is the one in the 50-foot buffer, because I don't know if maybe the dots are a little bit out of place, but I thought the tree leaning into the driveway was almost directly behind that big one by lightning, but they could be slightly spaced out, but it could potentially be this tree. So it very well could be the one in the 50-foot buffer, but the dots, I admit, I'm not sure which one, if it's this one or this one. I'm pretty sure it's the second one, but unfortunately, I
it's-
can't say.
Yeah,
100%.
I think it's, sorry, I was doing it on my phone. I think it's actually the third one from the bottom because it's directly also over the septic tank.
Okay, so this one?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because the black cherry is actually, it's right here. So it's like, yeah, it's almost right next, like across from the black cherry. So it's in the 100-foot buffer.
I thought that dashed line that you showed.
This, yeah, this is the 50-foot buffer.
Oh, from the stream. I thought you said that
Yeah.
there was another.
I thought it was from both sides.
Yep, so this is the wetland down on the southeast corner right here.
Yeah.
And then this is the 50-foot buffer to that wetland, so it kind of crosses like that. And then the
I see.
stream and the wetland is right here. So the 50-foot buffer is right here. It's
Yeah.
pretty much going through half the house and just outside of the septic tank.
Sorry, Charlotte, I don't follow anything of what you're showing there, so,
Can I draw? Hold on, I'm gonna annotate. Hold on. I'm glad I can do this. So this is the 50-foot
okay,
buffer.
okay.
There we go.
To the stream on the left.
Yeah, the stream, let's see, is,
It says stream.
yeah. Hold on.
No,
looking
that
for-
looks quite right.
This is the wetland here,
Oh, okay,
and there's the other wetland here.
okay.
And then the stream is going like, yeah, right here.
Okay. No, it looks
And-
like it crosses that.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
goes this
right
way.
there.
Yep, there we go. Sorry, this is a very messy drawing.
It's okay, it's all right.
Yeah, so they kind of like, you know, in a lot of these site plans, they kind of just almost combine the 50-foot buffer, you know, so the 50-foot buffer would have gone down this way, this way, this way.
Well, from the
They
top of the plan, obviously, there's another wetland.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So this, yep, there's another wetland here.
Oh,
It's not, I checked this area for a potential vernal pool. It's all yard. So if it was a vernal pool a long time ago, it definitely does not show any signs of being one.
Oh, okay, so we're starting to get a lot of lines, but what doesn't make sense to me is that leftward facing salient of the red 50-foot buffer, it looks like it gets closer to the wetland border than it should.
Sorry, I moved the map.
Oh,
Sorry, I moved the map.
oh,
So
okay.
yeah, this is, sorry, this is the
That
50-foot
helps.
buffer. Yeah.
Yeah, that helps, thanks. Well, it still looks too close.
What does?
That pointy corner of the 50-foot buffer right there by the
ledge.
what looks.
That's 'cause-
the
that's 'cause the
septic tank or
BB
something.
The BVW border is further back from the blue line. If you see the note there,
Yeah,
it's
so,
not actually the blue line.
yeah, sorry, hold on. I gotta clear my, hold on. And
I mean, I think we need
I
an.
don't clear everything. They're all, okay.
When is
Yeah,
this?
all we're determining is if we need an NOI or not, right? And it sounds like we do because we don't know where any of these lines are. This is from 2001 and that whole development was built behind here And a lot of this stuff looks drier than it was then, because they put in a whole water detention system back there, so I don't even see a stream when I look at Google Maps now.
Yeah,
there's
I'll
nothing
admit
coming
the
up on
stream
there.
was a little, I mean, it was dry because it's an intermittent stream and intermittent streams obviously are dry a lot of the time, but at least with the wetland, I can see the wetland here and here. Again, to the exact extent, I'm not sure, you know, we took a
Oh, so
previously,
How old are these wetlands delineations, Charlotte?
this was from, hold on.
2001.
This was from 2000, hold on, sorry. Bad with annotations here. This was from a 2000 site plan. This was for the the septic system design. So the wetlands were probably delineated at some point between 2000 and 2001.
It's out of date.
So it's 10 years out of date.
Yeah,
20.
usually for,
Isn't it 20 years out of date?
Oh, yeah, right.
yeah,
Thanks.
usually for RDAs though, I mean, in most cases,
Well, this is coming back to us as an NOI, almost certainly.
Yeah.
So it should come back with a fresh wetland delineation.
I would make that recommendation right now. I would second your motion, Tom.
I haven't made a motion yet, but that's.
I heard you talk about an NOI here. I mean, I don't feel comfortable with enough of what I've been seeing here to take any decision whatsoever. In terms, I don't know where the trees are, I don't know where the buffer zone is, and somehow we have to have something clear and understandable that we all can discuss, all right? And
Yeah.
I'm certainly not there yet.
Okay,
Yep.
so,
So even for that tree that's clearly coming out of the ground over power line, over the driveway, over the septic tank, I cannot take any action until there's another hearing. I'm just trying to understand what the next steps are. I'm very concerned about this particular one from a safety perspective, so,
You have the option of writing an RDA just for that one tree.
okay.
If you're
So
that
what we-
concerned, that one
we-
tree can be an RDA, and we can kind of dispense with that pretty quickly and leave the rest for a larger NOI or whatever it may be, if everyone
right.
agrees.
Yeah, so I guess something you could do or something commissioners could vote on is just on this one tree and issue a -3 determination by saying in a condition that the tree leaning over the driveway, you know, is acceptable to remove, does not require the filing of a notice of intent. All other proposed trees are not approved through the RDA and require the filing of a notice of intent. So you could potentially split up the work that way. I think we've done that before where we've
Yeah.
approved one part of the project and saying the other part of the project, absolutely not. So if Lisa, if you would want to prioritize removing just this one tree, if the commission, it would allow it for all the other trees, it sounds like we would recommend a notice of intent.
Yeah, if that's something everyone's open with, that would make me feel a lot more comfortable on this one.
Charlotte, that sounds quite reasonable. But I'd also point out that tree's probably been there for 40 years and it's unlikely to fall in the next 40 days. It could fall.
I'm not sure.
It could fall tomorrow and it might be there. If it were left, it might be there for 10 more years.
Construction workers and family coming back and forth, and I just don't want to take that risk, to be honest, but
Sure.
So
that one looks like it poses the greatest hazard. And it looks kind of clear that it needs to come down. So I'd be in favor of
Yep, yeah.
taking tree removal and NOI for anything else.
Yeah, and it's the furthest from the wetlands.
Right.
From 20 years ago also.
Makes sense.
So this is not the one that was in the 50, this is presumably if the delineation stands, it would be outside the 50 anyways.
I admit I cannot be 100%, but I'm pretty sure it is this tree right here. Which is just outside the 50. It looks like it's about 60 feet or so, maybe 65 feet from the wetland.
And if it is the third tree from the bottom of the screen.
Could be this one too. Yeah,
It would still be in the 100.
correct.
All right,
Okay,
yeah, I'm all right with that then.
so let's go with that then. So what is this, a +2, did you say, Charlotte? Or-
It's a little tricky, so I think I think we would write a -3 determination with a condition that only the tree leaning over the driveway in the 100-foot buffer is approved to be removed. All other proposed work requires the filing of a notice of intent.
Okay, so moved.
Oh, sorry. I don't know if I can make a motion.
Charlotte, it's
Yeah.
important.
Here, guys.
What she said.
We need to consider, is it or is it not in the 50? If it's in the 50, the wood has to stay there. If
So
it's not in the 50.
It
they can
seems,
cut
it
off,
seems
so.
to be the consensus, Eric, that is outside of the 50. It is either the second or the third tree, as we suspect, and
If we're all happy with that, okay, that's fine.
Also, I'm sorry, Lisa. I just noticed Jason in the audience. I apologize.
That's fine. Sorry.
I'm
we're
sorry if he
we're-
was raising
we're
his
in-
hand and I did not see him.
That's okay. We're both still in the office. We're in LA, so I
Okay.
apologize for.
Oh, okay. Yep. Sorry about that, Jason. Well.
So I would say, Ms. Rockwood, if you're comfortable with this consensus that seems to be emerging, that the leaning tree can be removed right away, and that further cutting would require an NOI and a wetlands delineation, then we could go ahead with this.
Yes, I'm comfortable. I don't know enough about an NOI, but I will learn and get back to you. But yes, as long as we can, I tend to always prove out Murphy's Law, so I just want to make sure that one. doesn't
We
come
can
down
talk
my wall.
offline. I can bring you up to speed about the filing of notice of intent, so we can definitely chat after the meeting about this.
Then yes, well, thank you.
Okay, so moving right along then, I'll make a motion that we issue a -2, Charlotte, or +2?
-3, so that's
-3.
the one tree doesn't need a notice of intent with the condition that only that tree is approved, and then all other proposed work needs a notice of intent.
Okay, so I move that we issue a -3 determination with the condition that the leaning tree over the driveway entangled in the wires can be approved for immediate removal. And any further cutting would require a notice of intent and a new wetlands delineation. Do I have a second?
Second.
We'll do a roll call vote. Will Ashton,
Will Ashton, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric Eisner, aye.
Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Chris McIntyre,
Chris McIntyre, aye.
Tom Bell, aye. This vote passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks,
Thank
Lisa.
you.
Welcome. Okay, so let's see where we're at next. 83 Spring Street. So this is continued, so we're going to reopen the meeting. Is that correct, Charlotte?
So yeah, technically we still have it open, so we don't have to read any public notices or anything, but
good.
just to give the commission a quick update, it was Tom, Chris, and Eric. You guys all visited the site. We had seen a rough sketch of a potential proposal for the home, which I'm sure Jeff and David will go into. But I guess before we start, commissioners who visited the site, do you have any initial comments, or do you want to wait for the updates from David and Jeff?
Evening.
Hold on, I have one comment. During our visit, and thank you very much, it was a very good visit, Mr. Wan. We appreciate your.
Thank you for your coming.
Okay, the issue is brought up about possible alternative location. I think we should know if they intend to move with the alternative site, so we don't spend our time discussing something which is not relevant to the project. So I guess my question would be, are we moving to the alternative site, Mr. Wan, or are we going to go with the project as it is?
I think, okay, go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead.
So I prepared a preliminary plan for us to take a look at this evening. Now, we just wanted to kind of pull the commission on if that's the direction we should go. And then ultimately continue this hearing to the meeting in 2 weeks. And we'll, we're certainly open to proceeding in that direction. So, so Jeff Assett here, David Wan is on as well. And this is a continued public hearing for an NOI and stormwater permit to reconstruct that house at 83 Spring Street. Greg Morris was at the last meeting and was in attendance at the site meeting earlier this week, but had a prior commitment tonight. So I did prepare a sketch, and I'll bring that up. And what you're looking at is side by side what we're currently, the current proposal, which is to reconstruct the house in that same location, which you're well aware of. It's within the 50-foot buffer, but also within the footprint of the existing house and the existing deck. It's going to be a slab on grade foundation, so they're not doing an excavation for a basement, so pretty limited excavation. There's no site grading. The utilities and the driveway are already in place, and all of the work is within that existing clearing, so it's a very small limit of work. And we're noting 3 trees to be removed, being that one, which is in poor shape, this tree, and then a smaller tree right next to the house. And that works out to be so alternatively, this is what Greg and David and myself were looking at this week. And I think what you talked about at the site walk earlier this week.
Yep.
So we could potentially move the house entirely outside of the 50-foot buffer. It still complies with all the zoning setbacks. The driveway would need to be extended to the house, but it's again in that existing limit of work. And the utilities would have to be extended too, but they fall within the footprint of the existing house, and that's a very minor job. There are 2 additional trees to be removed, but they're outside of the 100-foot, outside of the 50-foot buffer, anyways. And what you'd end up with is 0 square feet of impervious in the 50-foot buffer, and then we could also plant this area here as a native planting area in that area that's currently cleared and consisting of a portion of the house. So we are definitely open to that. We just wanted to use this opportunity because we're on the agenda to kind of poll the rest of the commission before moving forward with a formal filing on that.
Charlotte, do you have any comments?
Yeah. So I guess with the alternatives, I'll just note that, of course, the alternatives show the home outside of the 50-foot buffer, but at least for some of the tree removal work and the removal of the outhouse and the shed, regardless, we would still need a variance here for any work in the 50-foot buffer. And then I'll just refresh the commission's memory briefly that there is a superseding order of conditions previously for other permitted work on the property. The house was a part of that plan, but obviously they've moved forward with a new notice of intent. DEP did have a comment saying the superseding order of conditions should be closed out prior to any construction starting on the new NOI. I would recommend just have the commission just keep that in mind. And the only work left to be done, I believe, is putting conservation markers along the driveway. I believe all the planting for that previous plan has been done. Sorry, not trying to distract us from the alternatives here, but I just want to note we would still need a variance for any work or temporary disturbance to the 50-foot buffer.
Right. Commissioners? No comment?
The opinion, personally, I think that the disturbance to demo the house in the 50, if they were to move it outside of the 50 is tantamount to the same amount of work if they were to rebuild, potentially, or that's how at least I'm looking at it. And plus you had the removal of the extra trees, inside the 100. So I'm, my opinion is to, or my preference personally would be to keep the first plan. But could we just, Jeff, the parking spots that are shown there, is that, do you need to demo ledge for that, or what's the situation with that? There's ledge right next to it, is that?
Yeah, there probably would be some hammering for that to park there outside of the 50-foot buffer, but yes, some hammering.
yeah, still, I think, it's my opinion. I'm still,
Jeff, if you look at the new site, could you slide it to the left, please, the drawing? Where is the parking to be there?
So the gravel driveway would be extended to the garage doors.
All right, so it's in.
Right in front of the house in that area that's currently,
Yeah, it's in the
developed.
existing developed area.
right.
Yeah, yeah. To me, maybe a bit contrary to Chris, we have two projects here. They both require the same trees within the 50 roughly to be taken down. One is building a new structure outside of the 50, which is entirely preferable. They are, when we are at the site visit, we found they could take by hand the old structure down, leaving it a relatively undisturbed site at that point. It just seems to me that the new plan, with the construction outside of the 50, is probably going to be much more preferable from our viewpoint than the one with the construction in the 50. The trees are neutral because the trees are the same in terms of the ones that are cherished, which is the two that are in the 50-foot barrier that have to come down. So there's no difference there. But I think I would support the new plan.
I would add that in the new plan, there are 2 additional trees being taken down, but we're opening up space for plantings, so we could essentially mitigate for them.
These are the trees behind the house, right?
Right.
Yeah, but those are outside the 50. They're
Right.
beyond our control.
Well, they still lie within a wetland buffer. They are in our control to some extent.
Well,
We're not as strict between 50 and 100 feet as we are between the wetland and the 50-foot buffer, but they still are within the wetland buffer. Will, do you have anything, an opinion here?
Yeah, I'm with Chris. I prefer the one on the left. But either one, I'm generally okay with, depending on what the specifics of the plan are, and especially the construction means and methods, because everything has to come through the wetland to get here, so I'm okay with either, but prefer the one on the left.
Kathy?
Could Jeff talk about those means and methods of coming through the wetland and what machinery is going to be coming through to do the alternate plan?
Yeah,
versus the original?
It'll be the exact same equipment to do this project, whether we go with the original proposal or moving outside the 50-foot buffer.
Okay.
One of the things that came up on the site visit was extending the utilities and how feasible that was, because as you approach the new location, we really don't know what's there. We don't know whether we're going to be dealing with gravel or there's ledge immediately below surface, and you are going to put your utilities along with your water and sewer in the same trench. So as Greg explained it, that meant it had to be 6 feet deep. So that's that's an unknown here. I don't know whether you should put some test pits in there to see whether you're going to have to chip some rock to do that, in which case you'd be chipping in the 50-foot buffer. So it might, some of the commissioners might view that as overly intrusive.
I would definitely say I would not support any project that involved chipping, blasting, whatever, destroying ledge within the 50-foot zone, Tom. I think that's something that's not acceptable in our regulations. So yeah, the test pits are really necessary at this stage.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we can do a test pit in that location. So basically the water and the sewer come in this side of the house, and we would have to extend them underneath the house. So I won't be able to do a test pit right there, but I could do one within 5 feet.
Yeah.
I can get a good idea.
Right where your cursor is now, where it's going to essentially join the house. I mean, maybe inside the footprint of the proposed structure, if you scoot a little bit to the left, maybe a test pit there. it'll give you sort of a worst case scenario, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So this is a tough one. I mean, we're trading one thing for another here. We're tree traders to some extent. Some of those trees are rather nice trees, good specimens from what I can.
Well, I would say, I mean, regarding the trees in the 50, I would, depending, which, I guess either plan, I would be looking for some sort of, planting plan for replacement, but
Yeah.
I'm not there yet, so.
But Tony, let's be precise here. There's only one tree in the 50 if I look at the drawing. There's a large tree just outside the 50. But
There's two, Eric.
No.
Remember that little one that's up against, that one right there. It's what you can wrap your hand
Yeah,
around. It's so
okay.
small.
But we have one in the driveway.
Yeah.
Above the word exit, right? And the one to the left down below is not in the 50.
That's right.
Okay.
But the three trees they're proposing to cut there are verging on being majestic oaks, don't you think, Eric? They're they're pretty big diameter. They're very high.
But both plans involve cutting that majestic oak. So if we want to save the oak, we have to kill the plans, both of them.
So Jeff, it's sort of, in some ways, this gets back to parking, because if you're going to cross the area where the existing structure is, to be able to pull into the garage where the alternative proposed structure is, I guess I don't quite understand why you have to cut that, any of the trees that are near the 50, the one that the cursor is on now, and the little one. You already have a disturbed area there. And in either case, whether you put in the driveway to the existing structure or the proposed structure, I don't see that it's necessary to take, what's the caliper of that thing, Eric? I mean, that's a big oak tree.
That's big oak. Majestic. You're talking 50 years old.
Yeah. And the other two are, at least the one it's planned southwest, I guess, is also a pretty good size oak. And
Mr. Bell,
pains me to see these trees that are 50 or 75 years old taken down, and they are, and all of them are within the 100-foot buffer. Now, I recognize that we rarely require this kind of stringent rules for 50 to 100, but I do want to remind you one more time, that is within our jurisdiction. It does play a role in the ecology of the wetland. So that's a long-winded preamble to saying, I think I proposed the first plan. And if any of those big oaks can be saved, save them. It's that one that we're talking about where the cursor is. I just don't see why that has to come down.
Jeff, just a question. I mean, obviously none of us are arborists, but if the original plan were to be proposed and that large oak right outside the 50-foot buffer were to remain, would that tree eventually become like, it looked like it was perfectly fine, but would that tree at any point become a hazard where it would have to be removed? And, I know that's a tough question for you, but I'm just thinking about that too. If we choose a certain position for the home, will that tree eventually have to come down anyway?
It's hard to say. It's very
Yeah.
big. It might be leaning over the house. It might be dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
I think it might be more feasible to keep it with the alternative location
Mm-hmm.
where I could adjust the driveway. I just want to make sure the driveway is big enough that somebody can turn around.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I could look at that closer to see if we could keep that oak.
that may be a possibility. I just want to remind the commissioners, the first tree, the first tree coming into the house site, you have seen the bottom of the tree when we had a site visit. There is a huge gap inside, getting rotten in the bottom.
and full of ant holes, so the top
Yeah,
of the tree is
yeah.
probably a giant carpenter ant nest. So,
Yeah, I think since 2017, when I purchased this property, that hole has become at least 2.5% larger. So it is taking a huge space at the bottom right there.
No. Jeff, as I understand it, in the first diagram, the large tree that Mr. Bell is discussing, that would compromise your parking.
It would, yes.
You would have
It
no,
would.
if you leave that tree, you have no parking in no place to park in the first proposal, right?
You could park directly in front of the house here, but then you wouldn't have a lot of room to turn around.
Yeah.
And also that would also cause problems with a 50-foot buffer zone, area parking the car within the 50-foot buffer zone. And the chairperson has suggested that I should be finding a space away from the 50-foot buffer zone.
no, not at all. I think that that's a disturbed area right in front of the existing structure. And it looks like people have parked there forever. That's pretty compacted ground, and actually restoring that back to something that is viable with native plants would be a bit more difficult. I'm sure it can be done.
It'd be you'd have to dig it up, Tom.
Yeah,
You have to mix your organic material back in, reprocess it, and
Right.
essentially bring it back to its original form.
right. And that might create more of a disturbance to the wetland than we'd really like to see. And certainly, again, we're talking about working in 100 here. If you're going to excavate for these two parking places over there, that has some impact on the wetland as well. I mean, clearly, the ledge is just right under the surface there, and it just looks like to me the original plan, even though it's in the 50, it's already disturbed, and if we don't have those two parking places over there, park in front, the disturbance really isn't going to change much from where it's at now. But putting those two parking places in really substantially changes the increases the disturbance. Again, it's outside the 50, I recognize that, but it is a disturbance within the buffer zone at large. And so I'd like to see the cars park in front of the existing structure, even though it is in the 50, and preserve as many of those trees as possible. That's where I'm at.
Tom, I just have a problem seeing two cars, which is the number of parking places I have, in front of the house in the first diagram. I don't see how there's room to maneuver anywhere.
Well, if they remove that tree that is within the 50, the one that seems to be,
Small one,
it seems to have a large
yeah, with the ends.
divot out of its base and what appears to be ant holes in the wood, then you do have room.
Yeah, except behind that, Tom,
Yeah,
it's
I
the
know.
limit of work. The rest of that is untouched.
Yeah,
And
I
so you can't back very far up there to turn it around. The two cars, I think you're in an impossible situation from a parking viewpoint. That's my opinion.
Well, you're gonna demo that shed structure, right? I mean, why couldn't you park there? I mean, I guess that's in 52, but at least you're
yeah,
not.
shed's going to be removed.
Yeah, but it's,
Jeff,
it's
did
not
you
in the
say
plan.
there's going to be a garage here, and would that be underneath the house?
Yeah, it's going to be a slab on grade. The lower floor will be the garage, and then steps up to,
So the cars are actually going to park in the garage, and they only need to be able to back out enough to do a 3-point turn to get out, to avoid backing down the driveway, which would not be fun during the
I have
winter.
I have a double garage, Mr. Bell. I've never used it. I always park outside.
Well,
That's.
yeah, I know what you mean. A lot of people let their garages fill up with stuff. I'm guilty of at least one of my bays, but anyway, it depends on what Mr. One would do and what he would like.
Yep. Mr. One, you said before you wanted to get a feeling from us as to which one we proposed. You probably heard rather uneven position on both of those. But in the end, you're gonna have to choose one or the other. We can't continue as a Concom.
I think Mr. McFarland and you prefer to be out of there. Kathy hasn't spoken yet, but Kathy already has given us her opinion about a year ago that she would like to put it, in the existing site. So if I put them all together,
We don't want to be chasing our tail here. If I were to hazard a guess about Chris McFarland's viewpoint, I think he'd be closer to your position, Eric. I don't know what you think about that, but
yeah. So
so that'd split us almost evenly, wouldn't it?
yeah, it is
Not very helpful to
3-3.
Mr. Wan.
It is 3-3 with what is the where is the other gentleman? Where did he go?
Yeah.
With him being have no preference either one, so it is like 3-3 or 3-3 evenly divided. So I don't know what to do.
Well, let me offer this. I mean, I think I would be comfortable with either one of these, and I think that either alternative could be justified. And it's very hard to decide really to determine which is the optimal one here. But I think you could do either one of these.
Well, that helps.
Let me just say, let me give you my opinion very quickly, Mr. One. You seem to be indifferent between the two. That's probably wrong, but that's my opinion. As long as you're indifferent. Hold on.
Eric, I am here to work with you.
Yeah.
I will do whatever Conservation Commission wants me to do.
Okay.
I need a place to stay. I need to build a house. And, I have my preference, but my preference is somewhat irrelevant because you hold all the cards. And I will work with you. I don't want to fight. I want to have a constructive and positive opinions and suggestions and build upon it. That's what I want to do.
To me, Mr. One,
David, please.
okay, David, the second project, I think is from a construction, from a livability viewpoint, is far superior, except there are 2 extra trees to be cut down that Mr. Bell notes, all right, which is the big, and that's the problem there. Other than that, you have all your construction taking place outside of the 50, all right?
Yes.
Except for the trench you don't like, Eric.
Well, no, you have your tunnel, your trenching going underneath the old house, where the old house was.
Okay.
Correct? It's not, so that's going to be hidden. That's in the already developed area. So it really gets down to those 2 trees. Now, it's not my project. I'm not going to say which one we're going to go ahead with. But at some point you have to say, I want to be in 1 or 2. And then we'll start having a hard discussion on that, I think. We're flopping back and forth now, Mr. One. David.
I don't think there will be a problem with the trenches to bring the utility lines into the house. I don't think there will be that much problems with that. I don't foresee any problems with it. I understand.
If we go with the alternative option, we can probably save this room. It opens up more room for the driveway. We can work around this tree.
Yes.
So
Yes,
it's a
I
net
think-
only 1 additional tree. And the intent is we would propose plantings in this area. So I know they won't be a mature oak, but we could plant several oaks in that area.
That I agree also. So we can save 1 tree out of 4 that is suggested to cut.
I can live with that.
I think that's a much better concept from a human living in building, architectural solution than the first proposal, where you have these double-decker house, one on top of another. So.
Kathy, what do you think? You haven't said much.
I'm listening carefully. I I would go with the second proposal because it saves the 50-foot, the wetland in the 50, and it saves the wetland, and the footprint for your new house is about the same. You're still gonna have, things are pretty much the same, except for the tree situation, and you've just, proposed to save one of those 4 trees. So, and do some plantings to make up for it. So I would go with the second proposal.
Chris, I hope that I would still have your support if we choose the second plan.
Yeah, I mean, I would be open to hearing it out, and I could, I'm certainly open to hearing about it for sure.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, with that, we don't know what Chris McFarland thinks about this, but we seem to have certainly at least drifted towards Plan 2 or Plan B.
I think Chris would prefer Plan 2, Tom.
Yeah,
Plan 2 is
I think so too.
Plan 2 is much more consistent with our obligation to protect the wetlands.
Yeah.
Protecting the wetlands better in Plan 2 with the sacrifice of 2 trees.
Yeah.
Saving trees is not our prime goal in life here on Concom. It's the wetlands that is our prime goal. So
That's right. The wetlands are the resource.
Yeah.
The buffer is to protect the resource. So,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. So, does anybody else have anything to add at this point?
So just reiterating, did we want to see a test pit within 5 feet of that section of the house? And then it sounds like the overall preference at this time seems to be the alternative site plan. So we'd probably want to see that analyzed a bit more. If you're able to save that larger oak tree, I'm sure a lot of commissioners seem like they would be open to that, maybe looking at different orientations for parking, and just going from there, assuming that our chair would also want to see this plan. Are we missing anything else? Any other information or comments or questions that you guys would have for if we were to continue to 525?
Charlotte, I have one question for Jeff.
Yeah.
We do the test pit in either Plan 1 or Plan 2, and you cannot get 6 feet, but you get 2 feet until you hit ledge. What happened? Do you have a Plan B for the
Oh
utility?
boy, that puts a wrench in it.
Yeah, because
Well, I think we probably look into
gas.
how the extent of how much ledge it is and what would be involved in removing it. And what volume, if we know you only have to come down 2 feet, we'll look into what type of hammer can do that and how long that would take.
Remember, you're in the 50-foot buffer zone.
Right.
You probably couldn't do any of that.
Eric,
I really don't think that we have a problem with a ledge underneath that existing cottage. I
don't see any ledge outcrops in that area either.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm optimistic anyways.
Yeah, I think we can find a way to avoid blasting or hammering to bring the utility lines into the new site.
let's just
Right.
say that hope and optimism are not a plan.
Okay.
So you actually do need to develop a plan B for the excavation. Stepping out of my lane, Eric.
Yeah.
I would wonder whether a rock drill and expanding grout, where you're not blasting, you're using expanding grout and you're not hammering, would be more acceptable.
Okay.
Least disturbance, Tom.
Yeah, that's a very low disturbance way of
Yeah, that's a
breaking
great
rock.
idea.
And it's actually cheaper than the other two methods. I don't know why people don't do it more here. I've been using it around on my property and I'm totally amazed at how effort-free it is and how effective it is. Because you're going to be, what's your trench going to be, 3 by 6? 3 feet wide and 6 feet deep?
Yeah, about that.
Or does it have to be 4 feet?
I'm not positive.
I'm sure there's open trench rules here that specify the dimensions of a trench. If you go 6 feet, no doubt the state has regulations about how wide or how narrow it can be. A minimum, there's probably a minimum width kind of thing. So 6 foot trench is no joke when you're inside of one.
Yeah, we could also look into a trench box too to minimize that width.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. So it sounds like we need a plan B for the trench, which might actually mean relocating it. So you have to tap into it, say at the end of the driveway, and go straight down the new proposed driveway. That might be a possibility, or it might be a requirement. You might have to hunt around here to find a length, a depth that you can work with without breaking rock. So some alternatives would be helpful. Maybe more than just a couple of, well, let's just say that once you put in your test pits and you either get good news, you don't have to worry about if you get bad news, then you might then consider an alternate route and do test pits along it. And you might find yourself hunting around until you find that you've got 6 feet. And in that case, an auger is probably a lot more effective. I mean, a power auger on the back of a small tractor would probably be the way to go. You can put in a hole in 2 minutes and do very little disturbance in the 50-foot buffer. If you start poking holes down here with an excavator, you're going to do a lot of excavation in the 50, perhaps just looking for a route for your utilities. And I think it would be, for me, it would be much more acceptable to see 4-inch auger holes here. You're not trying to determine the soil types or the depth to water here. You're looking for depth to bedrock. And so an auger mounted on the back of a small tractor would probably be the way to go here to minimize the disturbance that your exploration is going to entail.
Tom, if it's only one test pit, would it be okay using a mini excavator with a narrow bucket if it's just one right here? Because I think if it's rocky soil, I'd be concerned about getting through with an auger.
Oh, those augers will pull stuff up the size of golf or bowling balls if you got the right one.
Yeah. I think it would still be a similar disturbance because with a mini excavator with a small bucket, if it's only one test pit, if we find the results we're looking for.
Okay, well, I mean, you're the engineer here, and I think I'll rely on you to use your best judgment to minimize the area of disturbance, keeping in mind that where you disturb may not be where you actually put your utilities in, because you'll get refusal at 3 feet or 4 feet or whatever. And if you start, I can see a situation where you could end up putting in a lot of test pits here if there is shallow ledge. If there's a shallow ledge, you'll know right away. So I think maybe your first shot probably is the mini excavator. But if you want to go beyond that, I would be real happy to see 5 or 6 or 7 holes that here are 3 or 4 feet deep and 2.5. I don't know how wide is that bucket on that mini excavator?
About 18 inches.
18 inches, okay. So 18 inches by, and to get down to 6 feet, it's going to be 6 feet long, probably, right? 4 to 6 feet long.
Yeah, it will be.
Okay. Yeah, so you're talking about a pretty big area that you're going to disturb for each one of those excavator done trenches, where if you do a 4-inch auger, you're going to use 4-inch diameter holes. And so the disturbance would be far less. It would, one excavator hole would be equal to about 4 or 5, maybe even 6 4-inch auger holes, maybe even 10. So again, all I can do is bring up the subject. You can decide for yourself how you want to go about this.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
do you
we'll
guys,
minimize the disturbance there, certainly.
Yeah,
If we end up
yeah.
having to do a lot of holes, we'll look into an auger.
Mr. Wan and Mr. Hassett, do you feel comfortable now with what you've heard? So do you need to know more? I'm not sure we can.
I think this has been very helpful. We've received a lot of guidance. I appreciate it.
Yes, I agree. Very helpful, and thank you very much for all of your comments.
I'd hate to see this get 2 more continuances. We really do need to bring this to a conclusion. And so I hope that what you've heard gives you enough guidance so that you can come back to us with a plan that we can all applaud.
Okay, great, wonderful.
Great. Okay, well, I know we're going to see you again. Have a good evening.
Good
Thank
night.
you, Ron.
Thank you.
Night.
Thank
Night.
you.
Welcome. You're
Sorry,
welcome.
Jeff, just to
Go ahead.
confirm, did you guys want 5:25 for continuance? David?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so here we are at Beechwood Street, a show cause hearing. This has been continued, so let's run with it, huh? Who's
Yes, so we have Joanne Tosco, who's the property owner, and we have Brad Holmes, who has helped Mr. Antosca submit a restoration plan. I don't see Joe, I don't see Brendan in the audience. It's just going to be you and Brad tonight, correct? Hi, Brad.
Hi, Charlotte.
So yeah, just to give the commission a quick update, and Will, I know you're caught up as well. We had Tom, Chris, and Eric visit the site to look at the disturbance. Just to give everyone a quick update from our last discussion. The site has been, for the most part, at least for now, stabilized with the wetland seed mix. Actually, Brad, I think there were 2 types of seed mixes. Was it what the wildlife flower mix and the erosion control mix?
Correct.
And so the area has also been put down with straw to help with stabilization and keeping the seeds in place for now. And then with that, I'll turn it over to Joe and Brad to present their mitigation restoration plan.
Sure. Thanks, Charlotte. Joe, do you want me to start or would you like to
I'm
introduce?
having a few technical difficulties. I don't know if you can see me there, Charlotte.
Not yet, but we can hear you.
All right. Well, I apologize for that. But as of the last meeting, per the enforcement order, we were tasked with stabilizing the areas that were disturbed. Excuse me, with the seed mix that Brad had spec'd. We were also tasked with drafting a brand new plan that would reflect the new wetland line that Brad had gone out to the field, and we encompassed a much larger area. Based upon that plan, based upon the wetland flags, Merrill Engineering went out, they did a survey, they located all the flags, excuse me, and they also located the trees that were cut, as well as the diameter of the trees that were cut. Based upon that plan, Brad has done an overlay of a remediation plan that he was able to send to you today. And at this point, we would like to have the commission take a look at the plan and give us their comments so we can make the adjustments that we need to, or additions and revisions, and see if we can move this forward. Brad?
Sure. Thanks, Joe. This has been on a fast track. And we've been able to meet the deadlines to the extent possible. We got the site delineated as Joe had mentioned. We pushed the survey crew to survey the wetland flags and prepare a site plan. And Joe has been able to get the landscape crew in operation to finish the task that we presented to the commission before, which was to fix the rutting, top dress the rutting with loam and seed it with a conservation wildlife, basically a buffer seed mix. And we mix that with a native erosion control mix so that the erosion control mix will come up sooner than the native seed mix to stabilize the area. And then later on, as we progress into the spring and summer, we'll see the seed from the wildlife seed mix come in. So the site is stabilized. Joe and his crew have done a good job on that. And we, based on the existing conditions plan, we put together a restoration proposal that you just received today, proposing replanting of vegetation in the wetland and in the inner buffer zone. When I say the inner buffer zone, I'm referring to the 0 to 50-foot buffer zone. There are trees that were taken down in the outer buffer zone, but since that's a permittable activity with the Cohasset Conservation Commission, we focused on the areas that would require restoration, which would be the wetland and the inner buffer zone. This is the first step to get it in front of the commission for discussion, so they're certainly up for discussing it with you. We're proposing is a 2-to-1 ratio of trees for the trees that were removed, so 2-to-1 ratio of plantings for replacement for what was taken. One thing you have to keep in mind on this site is that it's extremely stony and rock boulders are everywhere. So it's not a site that I think is going to be optimal for planting. It's going to be a situation where we're kind of hunting around for planting spots within the area. And it's something that we have to be able to manage plantings into the site that can be carried into the site and planted manually. If we were to get large replacement plantings in the area and try to use a machine to support that, we'd just be digging up boulders. I think we'd be blowing up the area more than we would want to. It would cause a lot more disturbance. And furthermore, we just restored the outer buffer zone with the stabilization that we just described. So if you see here, this is kind of a schematic. What we're proposing is a mixture of larger and smaller size saplings. We have buffer zone saplings and wetland saplings. I've selected species from your list, which I agree with fully. So the species would be wetland species within the wetland and upland species in the upland. This would be something where I would be involved and kind of work with the commission to monitor and update the commission as we move forward, but it would be something where we replace the trees and kind of enhance the buffer and wetland. So with that, I'll leave it up for discussion. I know you haven't had a chance to kind of digest it because it was submitted today, but that's a result of us moving towards a tight timeline, and we've been able to meet that for the most part. Go back to the commission.
And Charlotte, do you have comments?
Yeah, so I'll just note that under the initial, the enforcement order we issued, although the plan was submitted a couple days late, at least it does show all of the requirements in terms of showing where all the stumps were removed, the size caliper, the location of where those trees were removed, with a total of how many trees are removed in the BVW within the 50-foot buffer and the 100-foot buffer. And then, at the time when we issued the order, we had required at least a 2-to-1 replacement of all the trees removed. So the only note would be that the 100-foot buffer right now, the 50 to 100, they're not proposing replacement, but they have met that 2-to-1 requirement for the wetland and for the 50-foot buffer. It does, I did have one comment, I'm sorry, I tried to send it last minute, but just to kind of clarify where the seed mix was installed with any other necessary erosion controls. And then, again, it would be up to the commission to decide what to do with the 100-foot buffer and any other proposed mitigation plantings in the BVW and the 50, given Brad's, input on the, difficult terrain of the site. And then in terms of the enforcement order, depending on what the commission wants to do, just to give you some quick options, you can either choose to keep it open especially if the commission has more comments about going back and forth on the plan. You can choose to lift it and issue a new one with different parameters, especially for monitoring and reports and timelines. But again, it depends on our discussion tonight. So just to let you guys know, you have options. And we did obviously grant a variance for this, for the temporary restoration work, obviously to put down the wetland seed mix and the straw erosion controls.
Commissioners?
Let me just say, Cheryl, I have not had a chance to read this. I was gone all afternoon, so I can't really have an opinion on it. I'm glad to see you've used the selections from our wetland and our upland list. So in principle, it sounds good. I have one very major concern with this and any plan. What we have here is this is raw meat for invasion with invasive species in the next 18 months. If we do nothing, this is going to be full of Japanese knotweed. It's going to have everything imaginable growing in here. And all these beautiful plans and dreams we have are for naught. So I think accompanying this, Charlotte, we need to have somehow an invasive control program over the next 2 years to make sure that our dreams that we're spending money and time putting together are actually realized. Because if it's not, it's going to be covered with like everything you can imagine, garlic mustard and things that were not even there to begin with, because now it's open, it's sunny, there's bare soil on the surface with some seed on it, but that's not going to stop the kind of things that we find here in our woods and in our flat open areas that are invading right now. So, and we need to have an invasive control program.
Yeah, it was gonna be my comment as well, Eric. It was already apparent, there was garlic mustard throughout. There was at the northerly end, I guess, or the northwesterly end. There was Japanese knotweed popping up. I think there was Phragmites. I think I spotted some Phragmites popping up there. So that was a major concern for me. I wanted to ask about the tree count. Did the count of trees, was it restricted to trees that were cut in the most recent clear cutting, or was it I noticed there were several trees that were leaning over, which I understand, were, they look like they were cut, but they had fallen. I think that we would have wanted to have heard about those to remove the wood, but there was also, it looked like there was some that had not fallen, that were, grayed out on top, indicating that they had probably been cut in the last few years or the last couple of years. Did the count include those trees as well, or is it just the fresh ones?
I can address that. I believe it accounts for the trees that were recently cut. There was a storm damage within the last few years when those other trees were cut. So that wasn't included in the plan. It was the recently cut trees.
Yeah, like I said, there was some that had fallen over, which I noted, but there were others that I observed that were, not, they were straight. They didn't look like they had fallen during a storm event. Maybe they had partially. And my opinion would be to include those that were, obviously cut down healthy trees in the last, few years as well. And then my other comment is I'm looking at the tree totals here. It says 7 in the BVW, 10 in the inner buffer zone, and 11 trees in the outer buffer zone. So that's 28 trees, and the tables below. Okay, so the 2-to-1 is only for what the BVW trees. You're just doing 1-to-1 for the buffer zone. Is that correct?
I've accounted for 2-to-1 ratio planting for trees that were cut in the BVW, 2-to-1 for trees that were cut in the 0 to 50. I haven't included replacement trees at this point. As far as discussion with the commission for trees between the 50 and the 100-foot buffer zone, because theoretically with an application and approval from the commission, that would be a permittable activity between the 50 and the 100. Of course, that's up for discussion and discretion with the commission, but at this point, just accounting for the trees in the BVW and the 0 to 50.
Further comments from commissioners?
Yeah, I mean, regarding that, I would want to see that replaced, those replaced as well. It's a.
Yeah.
That's my opinion on this.
The objective here is to return this wetland to its original splendor with the density of natural growth that we had before this incident took place. And if what Chris says is the case, then we have to proceed on that route.
One aspect that I did bring up is that there is a access and easement, you can see shown on the kind of that property line, and Joe can give you a little bit better history on that, but there has been presentation to the commission in the past and maintenance of that access and easement. That kind of goes into the aspect of the revegetation in the 50 to the 100, but it's not that we're opposed to working with the commission on that. It's just, this is kind of our first cut in presentation to the commission and meeting these tight deadlines, but I'll let Joe kind of give you a little bit more of the history of the easement.
Is that like a deeded easement, or are you referring to the area of maintenance that was granted by a commission assessment, like by a conservation commission? The area of maintenance, is that a deeded easement, or was that something that was part of a commission's
The area of maintenance was part of the filing that was done in 2008. Because there was a right of way that went along that area of maintenance and access. And when you walk the site, and if you look at the plan, you will see some pole lines, because at one point in time, there was a house located somewhere along the wetland line. As part of the 2008-2009 filing, where there was a drainage issue with Bates Lane, the agreement that we came to was to pipe the water from Bates Lane, from the homeowners that abut this property line, and we connected to their pipe, ran it out into the BVW where you see that small dog leg, and that's where the outlet is. And one of the requirements was that we had to maintain that area to be open, otherwise it would block the water flow and eventually flood the people uphill. So some of the trees that were taken down, a lot of them were along this area of maintenance. But I hear what you're saying, what the commission's saying, and if we take that count and we work to either put some plants additionally into the wetland to supplement what we're already going to be planting, that would be another option that you could consider, or Brad can consider laying out.
Yep.
I think there needs to be some clarity on what activities are occurring for maintaining access. Typically, if we were to order, orders of conditions are good. We have a 3-year period on our side, whereas it just seems odd that there would just be an indefinite no revisiting this whatever it was, and a right of way if it were granted by the commission without review or checking up on things to see, especially in the buffer zone. I don't know if that's something that any of the other commissioners are familiar with. It doesn't seem like something that we would
looking at the old COC that was granted for the project back in, it looks like the COC was issued February 17th, 2009. I don't see any ongoing conditions specified from that order. It just says complete certificate at the time that the work was completed upon a site visit in February 2009. So usually for COCs, if we grant them for projects, we would specify certain ongoing conditions. But unfortunately, I don't see any here.
Could we, getting back to the area of maintenance and access, I don't recall ever seeing anything like this on any of the other plans we've seen. And admittedly, I haven't looked at a lot of them. I've been here for 3 years, 4 years. I know I've never seen anything called an area of maintenance and access. So is this a utility easement, Mr. Antosca?
No, it isn't.
Okay. And is it a right of way that is maintained for a property along this corridor? In other words, does somebody at the end of this narrow strip have a right to build a driveway here to access their property?
No, they don't.
Okay.
Can I just, let me.
Anything you can say to clarify this would be helpful.
Initially, since 2003, the primary goal of that was once a year, we would mow that, so we would have, it would be clear along the property line. And then once the outlet was put into place, we would mow that so there wouldn't be overgrowth right where the discharge pipe was. And if I hear the commission correctly, I would think that going forward, if even prior to mowing or anything out there, we would have to we would contact the commission and get their approval before anything would be done out there in the future.
Is this area of maintenance and access, I think this question's been asked and I don't think we got a clear answer, whether it's recorded on any deed. Does anybody have a deed that includes this area of maintenance and access?
I don't believe so.
So it doesn't sound like this has any legal standing to me. Maybe I'm not a lawyer, but it doesn't sound like it to me. If you could provide some evidence that this area of maintenance and access has some sort of legal meaning, it would be really helpful for us. Absent that, I would say that it doesn't exist, except for some writing on somebody's plan. So I'd say the burden of proof that this has some sort of legal standing is really upon you.
Yeah. Tom, does it make that much difference from a wetland management viewpoint?
Well, I think that's a starting point, Eric, to know this area of maintenance and access has been, if I'm understanding that right, posed to us as an area, kind of a free fire zone. You can relate to that. And you can do anything you want there, even though it's within, in cases, some cases within the wetland, other cases it's within the 50-foot buffer. We continue to hear an argument that it's necessary to mow or keep the brush clear of a drainage pipe. Well, there's a lot of pipes in town that have vegetation over them. So that doesn't sound very convincing to me. I mean, I could be convinced if I heard a logical argument about that, and that hasn't happened yet. So I think my first interest is, the first question is, does this thing even exist? And from what I can tell, since nobody has it written into their deed, is it, Charlotte, is it mentioned in the original order of conditions from?
Let me try to see if I can
I don't think that the commission has any ability to designate somebody's property to have some specific zoning privileges.
I can take a look at the 2008 files in detail. I did pull the files, and Joe did give me some of the major documents as well. So I can do a deep dive and see if there was any sort of legal documentation on the original plans or the original NOI submission, just to double check. But yeah, and, of course, Joe, as well, if you have anything to provide for us. It sounds like we have more, comments and input on this plan too. So maybe for the next continued hearing, we could see any of that documentation if it's available. But I'll look on my end as well.
I think if getting down to the kind of the case before us, then ignoring whether there is a special area within this disturbed area or whether there isn't. I think some or perhaps all of the commissioners, and particularly those that have seen it, would agree that the removal of canopy over this wide area, and it's been alluded to what's going to happen as a consequence of that, is pretty substantial. And the putting saplings in there is not going to address, there's not going to be a canopy there in 5 years. Or is there, Mr. Holmes? Will there be a canopy there in 5 years or 10 years? How long will it take to replace cutting down 22-inch, 37-inch, or 30-inch? I mean, these were some big trees that we saw out there, and there must have been some substantial canopy to prevent lower growing things like knotweed and garlic mustard from taking over. So I think the question for us is this adequate? And when will it be adequate?
One piece that I can add is that when you look at the aerial imagery, there was an open area historically through the site. It wasn't a fully wooded area, but obviously you can see where the trees were cut because they're marked on the plan. We can't bring back a 20-inch diameter tree, obviously. So it will take time for it to be canopy. But on the other end, it does offer different wildlife habitat benefits with a meadow and openness. And I do agree that there needs to be an intense maintenance and monitoring so that we don't have an invasion of invasives there. So I did include tasks for maintenance and monitoring to remove non-native invasive plants as they colonize, and I can provide some more detail on that.
So we're looking at 2019. Keep scrolling there, Charlotte. Looks like pretty dense canopy that we're seeing here on near map imagery. That's obviously a winter scene, so keep going for the, so we're at 2020, that's only 3 years ago. Looks like there are some open patches in there, but still substantial canopy. So if we were to start estimating 2021, estimating the open area, it's not like there's very much, Mr. Holmes. You were at 2021 and it looks like a pretty dense canopy.
Yeah, I haven't seen these images. I know when I looked before, there was, on Mass GIS, and I haven't done a thorough review like you're going through here, but there were some open areas. And if you look at the site.
Is that as far as it goes, Charlotte? Can you go to 2023?
Yeah, I was trying to isolate the slight difference between October 2021 and the next flyover, which was April. So, this is the October 2021 storm did knock out probably some of the trees, but just going through it here, there's still at least a fair amount of canopy.
Yeah, these are slight differences you're talking about.
Yeah, so this is obviously
all the way back in July of 2022.
Yep.
Just a year ago. The canopy is not as dense as it was a year before that, but still the percentage of open area looks to me to be pretty low.
And meaning the canopy is a little bit different than necessarily the open area, because when you look at we already have the surveyed stumps and you were on site to see it. So you can see that the whole area wasn't as forested as it would look in the aerial image because where the stumps are.
Of course, because that was a fairly mature forest. And of course, all of those trees that were unable to compete because of canopy from the older and bigger trees weren't going to make it. So I don't think it's valid to argue that the stumps are really a valid measure of what's happened out there.
I'm not in any means trying to argue with you on that. I'm just saying that when you're, I can just say from where I'm on site now,
Mhm.
and you can see the stumps that were cut versus, the trees. So when you relate it to canopy, that's a different story as far as canopy versus the trees cut, in the sense that, you have a wide ranging canopy versus, the individual stump.
So if we were able to recreate this, we certainly couldn't recreate it by putting the same number of trees and somehow speeding time up. But I guess what I'm getting at, that this 2-to-1 replacement of saplings, what caliper are you talking about here? Do you have to be able to carry them in a wheelbarrow or whatever, right? So
Right, we're talking about 5 to 10 gallon size
Yeah.
saplings.
and how
the-
long would it take to come back to that canopy?
That I wouldn't be able to give you an estimate on that. A long time.
Would you say order of magnitude decades?
Yes.
Not years, decades.
Again, I wouldn't be able to give you an answer on that. That's
I suppose we could get a tree ring count on each of those stumps and get some notion of that. But that seems like we're going pretty far into this.
you could do a lot of different studies on it.
Yeah.
Definitely. And at one point, this area was fully obviously cleared, and that's why we have the stone walls, and it was a farmland, and it changes over time. So my point was not to, I certainly don't want to get into an argument with the commission on trees and the value of trees in the site. I'm just saying that it offers different wildlife habitat and ecological benefits to maintaining upland meadows and having some openness. Obviously, we're trying to work with the commission to revegetate. We're starting with a 2-to-1 ratio. The issue that I see here is that it's so stony that you can't get large plants in here. If you were to try to propose that, you'd need an excavator, and you'd dig, and you'd move boulders around, and you'd blow up an area of 20 by 20 to get one tree in, and you'd really create more disturbance to the land in trying to get a larger tree in than just working with the land and trying to fit trees in where you can. And that's how I've crafted it, so that it's a kind of a doable situation. It's not an easy situation. It's not something that we look to be in front of you on, but it's, I guess, more of a realistic.
Let me ask you a question. As I look at this diagram right in front of me, there is an area, there are two areas that are very clear, that have no plantings whatsoever. Why are those void of plantings? One's on the left and one's on the right before the blue line. Well, why do we not have any plantings in there?
This is more of a schematic, as I put in the narrative. I know, I apologize for getting it late to the commission, so you haven't been able to review it, but the schematic is basically to show you and the commission where we would try to replace plants in and around the trees that were because of the site conditions. We're going to have to probe around and find areas that we get 2 feet or so to dig to put plants in the ground. So it's more of just the narrative really tells the story, versus this is more of just a kind of schematic.
So the large void areas are areas you consider unsuitable for large plantings?
No, not necessarily. It's not proposed for planting there because it isn't in the vicinity where trees were cut.
Okay, I mean, if I look at the tree cover, all right, that we saw in the prior photographs, I would say we should go back with this diagram and pretty thoroughly cover that whole area with decent sized trees, I know they come in on a wheelbarrow, all right? But we have very large void areas in there. I think we have to avoid those if we're trying to mimic what was there before.
We could look at that. The issue is, you're looking at an aerial image with it fully forested. You don't have a current aerial image, during the growing condition or growing season to be able to compare. So we could certainly do an overhead aerial image and compare the two and look at, areas that are void and focus on that if that's what you're looking for.
I'm looking at your diagram here, and I say about 50% of it has nothing planted whatsoever. And that doesn't make any sense to me, given what I saw in the photograph, the aerial photographs we had before. I would think we want to have that type of planting from left to right throughout the whole site, down to the edge of the wetlands there.
I understand, and what we've done is we've located the trees that were cut. We haven't located trees that remain. So it's not as that this whole square is a clear cut. There's nothing there. So we can certainly compare and get some more data on that.
That would be really helpful to fill in the existing trees. And then if we, I see what Eric's getting at, and I was looking at it too. I assume that there were trees there, but it would be helpful to survey in the trees that remain standing. After being there, having a look at it, obviously the area is exposed now to the sun, and that soil is going to dry out pretty darn fast, particularly if we have summers like the last two we've experienced. And it would seem to me that and correct me if I'm wrong, if you're planting some small trees out here, they probably need to be, during the summer, they probably need to be watered every week or two if they're going to survive.
We'll definitely have to irrigate them, as you said, once or twice a week, depending on rain conditions.
Yeah.
Especially if we do it sooner than later. We definitely don't want to go past, I wouldn't recommend any plantings past June or so, because we get that full sun heat peak. We'd preferable to wait until October. But that's again, something that we're working out as we speak.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my question to the commission, just given the concerns with, closing in on the limited planting time for the spring. So, it sounds like we definitely need to see a little bit more information on here, but just wanted to kind of caution the commission in terms of what, we would like to see done now versus what we'd potentially like to see done later. And just trying to prioritize that either to stabilize the site, prevent erosion, and potentially slow any growth of any invasives. I'm not sure planting a bunch of sapling trees will help too much at the,
It's not,
yeah.
Another issue of removing that canopy is that existed and it preserved soil moisture and therefore preserved the boundaries of the wetland. And to have all that exposed soil, and there's a lot of it out there, that's kind of desertification, if you ask me. And until there's a substantial canopy back there, that's going to be dry. That wetland's going to be impacted, probably far more than any wildlife habitat that might be created by a meadow, if the meadow even comes up. So I think what the next step here is to present us with a plan that does show the existing trees, so we can determine how much canopy is actually missing, perhaps. And instead of a conceptual drawing, if that's what this is, it sounds like that's what you're posing it as, is this is sort of what we're going to do, but the sort of what we're going to do isn't quite adequate, I don't think, for us. We'd like to see exactly what you want to do. And we need clarification on the status of this mysterious area of maintenance and access. And in fact, if that has no legal standing, it's not on anybody's deed or whatever, then you need to be planting in there too.
Additionally, Tom, I would like to see the tree count include trees that were, observed that were, clearly cut within the last 5 years as well.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Chris, come what may, they owe us a dense canopy potential here. Now, if trees were cut and hauled off, these things happen, cut into firewood. They still have to be replaced, even though we don't have the wood lying there. The important thing for us is to replace the canopy that Tom has been talking about, all right, one way or another. And it may take 10, 20 years to do that. But going tree by tree and bush by bush is really dealing in the minutia. I think they need to come back with a plan that gives us the potential in 10 years of a dense, well-covered wetland woodland here. That's what I want to see, and not counting trees because there was a trunk here. I don't care about that. They owe us a woodland that was thriving and had good shade, and was functioning as a wildlife habitat.
Yeah, I would love to see that. There's the terms of what they're giving us is based on tree count. So that's why I want them to count more trees, Eric.
I don't give a damn about tree count. I'm sorry, Chris, I'm not saying this to you, all right? I think this place should have enough trees, whether it be 10, 20, 30, 50, to provide a dense canopy, because that's what we had before. And you can argue maybe it's too dense, maybe not. Well, that's too bad. You cut the thing down and the evidence is gone. So give us what we want, which is a dense canopy. All right. It's too late to go back and worry about whether our tree count's accurate or not. You've already committed the act, and you've took hundreds and hundreds of years of growth away, and we're putting saplings in the place of 20-year-old trees. What's the justice of that? All right. Now I know you can't do anything else, but let's offset the fact that big trees are gone by increasing dramatically the number of trees and putting the irrigation system in place necessary to make sure they survive.
Yeah, I'm in favor of that.
So Eric, the idea of it's not necessarily a tree count, but at least posting the existing trees will give us some notion without going back out there again, which I have a feeling we will be back out there at some point.
Yeah.
It'll give us some notion of where things are getting filled in or where they don't need to be filled in. So for example, those areas that you identified, and I see them too, that nothing seems to be there. Well, maybe there are trees there. And I think that would be helpful for us to know.
That's fine.
And you can call it a tree count, or you can just call it I don't know what else you can call it, but that's what I would find helpful, is just to know what's left. And what do they really need to fill in? And
I think you'd call that a baseline, Tom, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And build on that.
Yeah.
So Joe and Brad, it sounds like I'm gonna recommend to the commission that we keep the enforcement order open until we get a more updated plan with the existing trees on the property, so we can see where to potentially put more, and again, showing more documentation on the status of whether that access area is an easement, and if we do need to plant trees there, and then showing the trees cut previously from within the last about 5 years. And then the potential for restoring to, the canopy, percentage of the canopy that was lost in this area. So, I'm happy to go over, I took a bunch of notes, but it sounds like we do want to continue the show cause hearing and keep the enforcement order open for now until we have a more finalized plan on what to do. And, I'll just second, commissioners, just keep in mind too, the timeline. So, we can continue to 5/25, but, as Brad said, we wouldn't want to plant anything past June. So not trying to pressure you guys, but just want to kind of note the planting season is, yeah.
By the time you get the plantings organized and you get them available, it's too late to plant.
Yeah.
For the most part,
That's my
right?
fear. It may or may not already be too
Yeah,
late if the
So if we were
plantings are
back in
available.
If we were back in early March, it would be different.
Right.
So, so Mr. Holmes, could you clarify what the what you expect, what your expectations are for the stabilization measures that you took. Let's start with the assumption that you're not going to be able to plant anything until fall. What are the consequences of just living with your native seed mix and the straw?
So the seed mix that was applied in the straw to hold the seed mix in place and kind of keep it moist is at the perfect timing. It's just at the right time for seed. So I expect that to germinate and stabilize that area within the next 2 to 4 weeks or so. I think that we caught the season for that optimally. I think the revegetation plan to modify it and come back with what the commission's looking for is going to take some time, because for us to analyze the canopy, we need the existing trees to fully leaf out and get some aerial image that we can compare and bring back to the commission, so that we can try to figure out how do we fill in the voids, so that we're not there yet. You can see the oaks haven't leafed out yet. They're budding, but they're not there yet. So within the next month or so, we can get some more data to get more of a comparison plan to kind of address what you're talking about, so that we can come back. So I think if we were to rush and to kind of get some analysis back to the commission, the data wouldn't be good, because we're not in the growing season to be able to compare against the plan that you're referencing. So a little bit of a roundabout, I guess, for what your question is. Your question is stabilization. I think we're good on that. We're in the optimal season. Over the next couple months, we're going to have to monitor and maintain invasives. That's going to be ongoing. That's already rolled into the plan. And then the item or the task of analyzing the canopy can't really be done now, because we're not into the growing season enough to be able to compare, but we will be soon, so that we can work on that and come back to the commission.
So I guess my final, thank you for that. I mean, that gives us some reassurance that there isn't a huge urgency to do this. And I think all of us would like to see it done right, rather than hastily.
Absolutely.
And I guess my final question is it feasible to put some irrigation out there to make sure that your stabilization does germinate adequately and get sufficient root growth, even though we might again see a return to drought?
I think if we start getting into heat in June and we don't have rain, then we'll need to address that. That's kind of on us to maintain that, to stabilize it. Right now, in this season, we should be able to get rain every few days, once a week or two, to get this seed mix to germinate and stabilize. It's not like a lawn where you need to keep it wet every day to grow grass seed. It's a little different. So it's not something where we need to keep it continuously wet, but we get into extended dry periods, we're going to have to put some sprinkler systems out there.
When did that seed go in?
Last week.
Does some of that seed require, I can't remember the technical term, but doesn't some of these native seeds, don't they need to go through a period of low temperature before they'll germinate when the weather gets warm again?
They do. The wildlife conservation seed mix that we used would be is more of a slower growing seed. That's why we mixed it with a 1-to-1 ratio of a native erosion control seed mix. Both seed mixes were from New England wetland plants, so that the erosion control seed mix, the intent of that is for it to germinate quick and stabilize the soil while we wait for the conservation seed mix to germinate later on in the season.
So even though they haven't gone through that cold period, those below freezing temperatures, it'll still germinate this year? Or will it
I
germinate?
can't say that all the
Will it
species will,
germinate
but
next spring?
yes, certainly the erosion control seed mix and the wildlife conservation seed mix will. I don't have the specs in front of me to study each species in the wildlife conservation seed mix, but yes, we'll have stabilization and germination this spring.
Okay, great.
Okay,
So it sounds like we're going to continue this until Mr. Holmes, when do you think you can have these questions answered for us?
I would like to have a month
Okay,
at least
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
work on it, and if we're still working on it, then I can update the commission accordingly.
that'd be great. Charlotte, can you offer a date to Mr. Holmes?
Yes, let me just double check. So we have, I believe our second meeting in June is June 22nd, if I'm adding 14 days, because our next meeting is June 8th, May 25th, June 8th, and I think June 22nd, that's 14 days. So do you want to continue to June 22nd?
That would be great.
Okay,
Joe, does that work okay for you?
Yes, it does.
yes, June 22nd is our second meeting in June.
Okay,
fine.
so we're fixed up there. We will see you again on June 22nd.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good night.
Okay. So that takes us to 76
Lambert's Lane.
Lambert's Lane Sport Court.
Yep.
Dr. Marchetti.
I'll be really quick with this one. I'm continuing it, but it is partially my fault. I have to respond to some of Dr. Marchetti's emails, but I have talked to their engineer who is working on the as-built. I sent them all of the information of what we would need to see for a certificate of compliance request for the stormwater permit and for the order of conditions. So they are definitely working on it. I just need to respond to their emails. But we're just going to keep pushing this one along until we get the as-built. So Tom, do you want to push it off to May 25th or June 8th?
This one's been on our
I know.
calendar so many times.
I know.
Did you get any notion of when they might actually be capable of showing up? I mean,
Realistically, I would probably say June 8th. I can try to send them emails tomorrow and say, we would like you present at the 25th meeting if you're able to put everything together. Otherwise, we do have, I'll note that we do have, we did continue, Spring Street. We have a couple new projects, and I will note that some of them are bigger projects. So I don't know if we want to just save Lambert's Lane for June 8th. I mean, obviously we could get big projects then, but just
Yeah.
letting you guys know, we have some bigger projects on the May 25th agenda that are new.
Well, yeah, so if we know we've got big projects, let's not put 76 Lamberts on a night like that.
Okay, yeah,
It's
I may or may
been-
not bring in some other people for you guys, so I apologize in advance.
Sure. So yeah, let's push it down the road to June 8th.
Okay.
And hope that we don't have a crowded agenda on June 8th. We know we do on May 25th, so it's we don't want to continue it to then.
Okay,
All right, so our favorite thing,
sorry.
certificates of compliance. Ta-da.
You got 5 minutes.
All right, so I do see Richard Carroll for 32 Heather Drive in the audience, so if it's okay, Tom, I'm gonna
Yeah, sure.
promote him, and we'll do that one first.
Yeah.
Okay. And if anybody else is in the audience for any of the COCs, please let me know and we can prioritize you guys. Hey, Rich,
Hello,
how's it going?
good. Sorry, it's just bedtime with the kids.
Yep, no worries. Okay, so for 32 Heather Drive, just to refresh everyone's memory, this was a, hold on, let me pull up the as-built. This was a deck and pool project with only a tiny portion of the work that was crossing the 50-foot buffer. So upon my final site confirmation, the deck and pool were built per plan. They actually, I don't know if it was just a survey thing, but they're actually pushed a little bit further away from the property line. The original was like 14.7 for the corner of the pool and like 14 point something for the deck here. So it's a little bit further away. Really the only deviation that the engineer noted in their COC request was the deck spacing was just a tight, a little bit smaller. It was, I think it was 1/16 to 1/8 instead of 1/4 inch spacing, but based off of his calculations and, you know, the size of the site and it's in the 100-foot buffer, he didn't anticipate any negative impacts to drainage. So at least with me, I have no concerns with that. The one deviation I did note on site is that a propane tank was installed just at that corner that's just reaching into the 50-foot buffer. After talking with Rich a little bit, he said the distance with this propane tank has to be at least 10 feet from the foundation of the home, and the original tank, I think, was like right here in the corner, so it was not in compliance. So they did have to push it out to meet that setback requirement for building code. But other than that, that was the only deviation that I found in addition to the deck spacing. The site has been stabilized with hydroseed, everything, you know, so the site right here where they had some, you know, temporary construction entrances under our variance, that has been stabilized. And if the commission wanted to issue a COC, I would just recommend the ongoing condition number 40 with the no herbicides, pesticides, et cetera, in the buffer zones or the.
Good. Yep.
Sounds good.
No questions, comments?
Next.
Okay, all right, someone's got to make a motion.
I move that we issue a certificate of compliance for 32 Heather Drive.
With
the
special condition, yep, 40.
Conditions.
Okay.
Remaining in place.
Second.
And with that, we'll have a roll call vote. Let's start with Will Ashton,
Will Ashton, aye.
Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower.
Eric Eisenhower, yes.
Okay. Chris McIntyre,
Chris McIntyre, aye.
Tom Bell, aye. This passes 5-0-0.
Okay, thank you, Rich.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rich, for staying out of the buffer and doing a great job.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Very, very
Great,
cooperative.
thank you, Rich.
Thank you.
Okay, and someone's raising their hand in the audience. We have, sorry, give me one sec, everybody. Kevin Burke and I believe Bob Shepherd for the COC requests, partial COC requests for 98 Howard Gleason. So I'm just going to promote them real quick.
So yeah, we don't have to take them in order necessarily, Charlotte.
Yeah, sorry. If that's okay with you guys, I was just,
Fine.
I'm seeing people in the audience, so I just wanted to make sure we're taking care of them first and not sitting
Yeah,
around.
yeah.
Hi, Kevin. Hi, Bob.
How are you?
Good. So Kevin might be able to help us with a little bit of this, but so long story short for this one, 98 Howard Gleason, we need to file partial COCs for this particular property because of the land court. So these two NOIs, one from 2015 NOI 15-03 and one from 2020 NOI 2005, they are actually for different properties. The 1503 one is for 96 Howard Gleason and the 2021 is for 100, 102 and 104 Howard Gleason. But basically, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, the way that the original subdivision worked out, these orders got tied with the original subdivision before everything was split up. And so these orders, even though they have nothing to do with 98 Howard Gleason, are somehow tied to the property under land court. So land court does need COCs. But since both of these permits have not yet been completed, that's why they are just requesting partial COCs for each of those NOIs to at least close it out with 98 Howard Gleason. And Kevin, let me know if I've left anything out. It was a very odd request from the land court.
You're absolutely correct. What's happened is 98 Howard Gleason, also known as Lot 27, on the certificate of title, these orders of conditions show up as an encumbrance, even though Lot 27 did not have any work planned, contemplated, or involved in connection with the orders of conditions. The land court will not remove that encumbrance without a partial certificate of compliance issued by your commission. So respectfully, we ask that you issue the partial releases for this lot.
I also called land court myself because I was very confused and they did give me the same answer in a little bit more of a Greek version of an email, but thank you, Kevin, for summarizing that for us.
So commissioners, does anybody have any questions or comments about this? And Charlotte, do you have anything further to say about it?
No, since these two NOIs had nothing to do with this property, it's in my opinion that we should just issue the partial COCs for 98 Howard Gleason and keep the NOIs still open for, the person who will actually close them out in the future.
That said, and I move that we issue a partial certificate of compliance for 98 Howard Gleason Road.
Second.
For both NOIs, sorry, Tom, for both NOIs.
Yeah, sorry, Charlotte, for both NOIs, what do you mean?
For NOI 1503 and for NOI 2005
Yeah,
for 98 Howard Gleason.
right. So let me restate that then. I move that we issue a partial certificate of compliance for 98 Howard Gleason Road, covered by NOI 15-03 and NOI 20-05 with the conditions that, what was the condition again? Sorry. Or was there a condition? There aren't any.
Not really any conditions since no work occurred on this property, but obviously we can evaluate the actual properties when they file for a COC and
Right, okay. Now, I'm ready for a second.
Second.
Roll call vote. Will Ashton,
Will Ashton, aye.
Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric Eisner, aye.
Chris McIntyre,
Chris McIntyre, aye.
Tom Bell, aye. This vote passes, this motion passes 5-0-0.
Thank you.
thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
So the last two, is anyone here representing them?
I do not see any. Yeah, so I think just us for the rest of the night unless somebody pops on. And I'll just note, just to state for the record, that the stormwater permit for 34 Bancroft, I'm just going to keep kicking that one down the road until we get updates on the final status of the landscaping, grading, and planting. So I continued it to June 8th just to give them more time, and I'll just keep checking in with them. And then 609 Jerusalem Road just submitted a COC request for their NOI and stormwater, but after speaking with the owner, we do need to continue to finish some of the final site stabilization. So they also requested a continuance to June 8th. All right, I'll go to the next simplest one. So this is another one that got caught up in a title search. As you guys can probably imagine, the NOI, there's no Cohasset file number, so it's just DEP file number 13-49 for 44 Lantern Lane, originally lot 10. Basically, long story short, this was the original house construction in 1979 and installation of a garage, house, and septic system. I did find an as-built, at least for the septic, which shows the house and garage in the Board of Health files. They have filed for a COC because, again, this came up in a title search. Basically, we didn't find any deviations, at least with the house design in the garage, the driveway here. And then for some reason, which again, this is a Board of Health thing that the director will be looking into, but the septic leaching field was partially built underneath the driveway. Not sure why that's a thing, but it passed a recent Title V inspection. And looking at the old order of conditions, I don't see any relevant special conditions to issue with the COC, but at least based off of the original house design, it's pretty much stayed the same since it was built. And there are a handful of very large trees that have just been kind of chilling here. Although I will note now the lovely MBTA line is right behind this property when there was supposedly a brook here, but that's a different issue. But at least with this project, I didn't find any deviations. And yeah, this came up in a title search.
Okay, so there's no one here representing the owner.
I do not believe so, unless Kevin is here for anybody else, but I don't believe so.
Okay, with that said, then I move that we issue a certificate of compliance for NOI from 1979, DEP file number 13-49, 44 Lantern Lane with no conditions. Do I have a second?
A second.
With that, we'll have a roll call vote. Will Ashton,
Will Ashton, aye.
Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower. Eric. You got it? There you go.
I'm back. Aye. Sorry.
No problem. Okay. Chris McIntyre,
Chris McIntyre, aye.
Tom Bell, aye. That motion passes 5-0-0. One more to go, Charlotte.
All right, how am I doing so far?
Great, you're doing great.
Unfortunately, I'm gonna break my short track record with this one. So this one is,
Oh,
I know, I'm sorry. I'll try to go fast. I will
Okay.
try. So this one was a 2019 NOI 19-15 and stormwater permit 19-18 to reconstruct the home and install plantings. Some of them are actually directly in the wetland because they're moved to guest house. So I'm going to pull up the as-built just so that you guys can see it. I do have notes and comments for this one, so I'll try to run through them quickly. But basically, the engineer did note a few deviations, that the garage doors are actually now located on the, oh my God, what is this? The western side of the house. They're originally supposed to be built on the southern side with the driveway actually being larger. So by building the driveway entrance or the garage entrance on the western side, they actually made the driveway turnaround here instead of over here. So it's a little bit smaller in design. They also did speak with Jeff Summers about switching from gravel to permeable pavement. I could not find any written documentation of this, but I did talk to the builders, the contractors. They hired Plymouth Paving, who Jeff recommended back at the time. They did discuss it on site. So the original driveway was supposed to go down here and was supposed to be a lot bigger, but they made the turnaround a little tighter, but the driveway entrance here was less disturbance, at least for the driveway construction. And Jeff, at least on site, approved of the permeable pavement. The only concern that I had was obviously the original plan said gravel. So the long-term operation and maintenance plan did not include the details for maintaining a permeable pavement driveway. So I actually requested in advance of this meeting to update the long-term operation and maintenance plan, have the details for permeable pavement, which they have done. And I told them per our regulations, it does need to be recorded prior to the issuance of a COC. So if the commission did want to issue a COC tonight for stormwater permit, I would, recommend that condition that we, issue it the second they give us recording proof for that long-term O&M plan. And then the shed that was supposed to be, there was a shed that was removed here. It was supposed to be constructed in the 100-foot buffer. It was never constructed, and the owners obviously acknowledged that they would need a submission in the future for that. Those are the deviations noted by the engineer. And now we get into the other deviations. I will just note that it's not shown on the as-built, but there is a small drainage pipe that is connecting from the western side of the home into the wetland. I imagine this is from the roof runoff because judging from the roof leaders and downspouts, it does look like it is connecting from the roof. So it would theoretically be clean runoff. So it's not coming from the driveway. It's coming from the roof leaders underneath the home. I'm sorry, underneath the ground into the wetland. And I'll show you guys pictures of that if you want. There was a small bluestone walkway that was added right here, but it's a pretty small amount of impervious. The engineer didn't have any concerns. Same thing with these little granite stepping stones on the northern side of the home that go around to the back of the home. And then the deck was just built slightly differently with a couple less sonotubes. So I don't have any concerns with that. It's supposed to be 9 and there's only 7. And then I asked about the pervious pavement, and the engineer did say as long as it's properly maintained, it won't have a negative impact to the drainage in the wetlands. So that's why I said we need to revise the long-term operation maintenance plan, and they did do that. The plantings. So from the original plan, there's supposed to be plants right here, right in front of the wetland, which you can see on the as-built. And they removed a guest house that was in the wetland, and they were supposed to put down wetland seed mix, which has been installed, and also install native shrubs and stuff here. Unfortunately, it's not clarified on the as-built. But just to give you guys a comparison, the wetland area was supposed to be a little larger, so it's just smaller than originally proposed. I can show the approved plan for reference, but for the most part, the plantings have been installed on the western side and the northern side in the wetland. Brad Holmes, I know it's last minute, but he did submit a planting report today, which I can pull up, but overall, he did say that the plantings are in good shape. The wetland seed mix has started to germinate, even though it's a smaller area than originally proposed. There were some slight planting deviations where they planted an extra red maple here, a red maple here instead of a sourwood. But other than that, they did provide an invoice with all of the plantings that were on the original planting plan, showing that they were installed, not necessarily in the same exact area, but definitely at least installed on the site. And in addition to that, the last deviation is they just had some additional planting beds here. I will note, hydrangeas are right here in front of the western side of the home, and they had 2 American hollies right at the entrance. That's it. But I guess.
Hold
yeah.
on. Let's hear about those hydrangeas. Are they in
Yep.
Are they in the 50-foot area?
In the 100, not the 50.
Okay, because.
Actually, no, I'm wrong. No, I'm sorry. They are in the 50. This is the
They're
50
not
foot
allowed.
buffer. The 50-foot buffer.
50 does not allow, we cannot put our Japanese derivative plants in there.
Mhm.
They have to go out.
Yeah, I
All
mean,
right.
we have been pretty consistent with that. We
They're
did,
not on the list.
yeah. No, I do want to note that to the owners that they should take those out.
Now's the time of year, dig them up and move them 15 feet away and put them over in the lawn outside of the 50 and everyone will be happy.
Yeah, they would have to put them like all the way over here.
Whatever.
But I guess, does anyone have any concerns about the permeable pavement or the smaller wetland seed mix area? The boardwalk was a separate permit that we had originally
Yeah.
closed out last meeting, but does anybody else have any other concerns with those deviations? And are you guys, would you guys entertain a COC if they remove out the hydrangeas and record the long-term O&M plan?
I
I have a question about the
Clarification on
long-term.
Oh,
Right.
sorry.
Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, the drainage pipe that was added, you said it seemed like it came from the roof leaders, but that was just your guess, or was there an?
Unfortunately, that's just my guess, yeah. It's not, I can pull up the original plan, but unless I'm missing it and I'm blind, I don't see it on the original plan. But
When that house was I was finished, but not
Mhm.
inhabited, there was a continuous sump pump running
mhm,
into the wetlands because
Mhm.
it's very, very wet there and it's clearly there's a
okay.
basement moisture problem. Is that?
It was running pretty like every 5 to 10 minutes when I was on the
Yeah,
site. Do you think that's the same thing, Eric?
I have a feeling, yeah, it's probably an internal sump pump draining.
Okay.
the basement. For
Okay.
good or for worse, I don't know. But
Yeah.
that was clearly the case during construction.
That's actually probably right, because when I was on site, I was, doing an account of all the plantings. So I did hear it going every 5-10-ish minutes. So it probably is the sub pump drain. And that was originally existing, I guess?
Well.
I don't know. This was a home that was
It came-
existing and they,
Well, the house was built there.
yeah, there was a house
In the
here
last few
already.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's obviously necessary to have drainage because
Mhm.
the low point is very wet.
Right.
No one thought they could even build a house there. It was so wet.
Yeah.
At least
I don't
they-
know when this house was originally built, but
I would
that's
say
probably it then.
Probably
uh,
5 years ago or less.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I agree with that. I'd say it's probably the sub pump then because it was running every 5-10 minutes when I was on site.
I'd be concerned about somebody using their sump pump directly into a wetland, particularly if they had oil heating in their,
Mhm.
and that boiler's in their basement and stuff.
Mhm.
That's just not good. you know?
Yeah, I mean, that can't, even if it were a sump pump, you can't just pump into the wetlands.
Well.
Yeah, that's what I'm not
I have a
sure.
feeling What's going on here? The place was a marsh. No one thought they could ever build a house there. It was so wet. So they built a house. And they decided to pump the water that was in the marsh before they came into the house back into the wetlands. So I think that's the logic. As Tom says, it could be polluted. That could be a problem. So.
Right, which is.
Yeah, that was it. So it's literally if it's not in the wetland, it's obviously directly right in front of it. It's definitely in the, obviously, probably, I would say less than 5 or 10 feet from the wetland at best, or almost directly in the wetland, depending on where they delineated this. Some of the flags were gone, so I couldn't see where the actual line was here, but.
It's been a while.
I mean,
But
that should be infiltrated.
Yeah.
I just
Well, or
don't
something.
think they should be discharging water of uncertain quality to the wetland like that.
Mm,
Agreed. I think we need verification of the source and
mhm.
and when it was installed and that's my opinion.
Mhm.
I agree. If it's
Yeah,
bad
also-
water, it's got to be, I don't know what they do with it, but I'm sure Tom Tom has some inline filter he could put there. But- Is that right, Tom?
Well, soil's a pretty good online filter, and maybe
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
maybe that pipe should be
But the problem is, the water table,
perforated, you know,
yeah, the water table is so high there, all right?
Mm.
it
I
might
mean,
backflow into the
I
basement.
mean, at times, as you said, Tom, there'd be a backflow going into the house. from the-
Yeah, what happens if they lose power? I mean, they must
Yeah.
get.
I hope you have a raft.
Trying to remember if they had a generator on site. A lot of houses do these days.
Bucket
Maybe there's
brigade.
one in the back of the home. But I guess, how do we want to proceed with this? Because I don't know if this was like an existing condition that was with the original home.
Charlotte, I know this is a little thing, and you got
Yeah.
probably better things to do than chase this down, but
No, I have concerns. I mean, otherwise I wouldn't have noted it in my deviations. I was like, what the heck is this thing and why is it dumping into the wetland?
Charlotte, I would say the first thing is to do the fact finding. What
Mhm.
actually is going on? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's
Yeah.
not some property. I mean, let's not prejudge.
That's true.
yeah, I agree with that, Eric. Let's know what the real situation is. And
Yeah.
I think it's premature to give them a COC after seeing that.
Okay.
This is a
Yeah,
house.
this is
a
like,
house for sale.
oh yeah.
That's
I was just gonna say, not that this is our problem, but we do.
And it's going to close. They want to close in the next.
They want to close on Monday, and I have
it's for
talked to the
sale?
potential homeowner or the new homeowner. Maybe they could work something out, but again, I'm not trying to sound unprofessional, but housing sales are not really our problem. You know, we do want to obviously close out permits, but not because of a housing sale.
Did you say that this is something that turned up in a title search, so they didn't have any warning about this?
No, they've known they had to close out these
That's the
permits.
last one.
Yeah, so I've been working with
This
them.
is procrastination.
No,
Their part?
about that. I mean, I've been actually working with them probably since like the fall of last year, you know, because they said, you know, how do we close out our permits? And I said, well, you don't have one, you have two. And so they've been working with Morse and with Merrill to close out each of those permits. So, you know, it's just been getting the information and putting it together. You know, they had submitted the COC request actually months ago, but, you know, again, we've needed to put together a lot of information. I was waiting for more details on the plantings. I was waiting for updates on the as-built. The owners have definitely sent me as much information as they probably have. You know, they gave me the invoices with the plantings. So that's why I kept continuing this one, because I was like, I need more information. I need more information. I should have probably asked about that pipe earlier, but I had only gone to the site April 26th, right before I went on.
There's a long history to this project.
Yeah. So I mean, it was a lot to digest
This
in a very
house-
short amount of time, I'll admit.
This house is probably the longest project I've worked on in my 6+ years.
Mhm.
It went
Yeah,
on for months and months because it's a lot of wetlands there, a lot of work and just a lot of controversial issues. So.
Yeah, it was, like I said, it was a lot to digest in a very short amount of time. So I was definitely trying my best to make sure I had all the information before I brought it to you guys. But unfortunately, I missed the pipe until my final inspection visit. I mean, it's up to you guys. I mean, we can either not issue a COC, or we could issue a COC, but then bring the owners in for a show cause hearing and ask them to clarify what it was, and it may have been existing, and they may have to file an additional NOI to fix it or something. But it's up to us. I mean, it's up to you guys.
I think just delaying their COC will build a big enough fire under their chair that we will see them and they will respond quickly. I don't think we need
Okay.
to have.
Yeah, we can.
Don't have to worry about that.
This is a good example of why we changed our bylaws to have expiration date. This is exactly what we're trying to avoid.
Mhm.
And this is obviously in the landowner's interest, not just our interest. Of course,
Yeah.
but this is in the landowner's interest to close these out after 3 years instead of, you know, what is this, 2019, right? So we should have closed it out a year ago.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I mean, I know I'm not sure why it took this long, but it was partially my fault because, again, I did say I need more information. I did want a report from the wetland scientists because they were planting not just in a buffer zone, but directly in a resource area, you know, and normally we would want to see.
Charlotte, In
Yeah.
my lengthy work on that house's
Yeah.
property, I do not remember any request for approval of some pump flowage into the wetlands. That was not
Okay.
included in the project. That's.
Oh,
that's-
no, yeah, I was just explaining why it
Not
took me
there.
so long to bring this to you guys. I mean, it was partially me because I wanted more information about the plantings. The plantings I was really stressing on.
Charlotte, that's
because-
perfectly legitimate. Don't,
Yeah,
so don't
yeah.
don't feel bad about that.
You're doing a good job.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're doing the
Yeah, I
right.
missed the pipe. That's gonna be a fun conversation for them. But yeah, I'll say we can, we've asked to continue this. We don't want to deny, right? We just want to continue it and say we
Yeah.
need more information about this. Okay.
Right.
Um,
And you
okay,
might- and you might mention that, if they were to address that, it'd all go a lot easier for all of us.
absolutely. Yeah,
Can we continue it without them here?
I think so. I mean, it's technically like we're.
Yeah, I'm
RDA
sure we
where you're
can. We've
technically
already
supposed
asked
to
that question of council.
Okay, good. All right, let's.
Yeah, no, we can, yeah,
You,
no, that we can do. It's just COCs are kind of like RDAs for whatever reason, where you're technically supposed to issue a decision in 21 days. But I don't know what the repercussions for that are. Like, do you automatically get a COC or something? But like, I had asked them to continue. They had asked to continue until May 11th, until they got all the information. So they've already, of course, acknowledged and waived the 21-day deadline. But yeah, so we'll continue to 5/25. I'll let them know and I'll tell them you should come to the meeting with
Okay,
contractor, whoever, and,
I think
explain
I
it.
think I know why they were planting in the wetlands. They were trying to disguise that pipe.
I found it.
I know the Schwanzes.
found it.
well. I've
Nice work,
I've
Sherlock.
spent more time there, Charlotte, than any other project. Tell them I'm coming down to have a look at it. They'll say,
geez.
Oh, no, keep him away.
All right, so we're gonna move on to construction updates. Looks like
Okay.
there's some fun ones here, huh? Okay,
All right, 187 Atlantic, I continue.
go into your used car salesman cadence of speech.
All right, for Rose Hill Lane. Long story short, we've had some butter concerns about the construction of the drainage pipes, and then coincidentally also got an anonymous complaint to DEP. I did go out to the site. I looked at the drainage pipes. There were 3 that were approved just within the 100-foot buffer. This was a pool project that was already in a disturbed lawn area on top of a slope partially in the 100-foot buffer. In terms of the drainage pipes, they are being built for the most part per plan. However, Paragon is the contractor. They thought they didn't need the 3rd drainage pipe. They thought they could just connect everything into the infiltration system for 2 of the, so basically I'm waiting for input from Brendan, who's the engineer, to make sure he's okay with that, because again, there's, as the fun relationship sometimes between contractors and engineers, and I'm in the middle. So I told them, normally, again, we want to have these discussions in person before you do the changes. So if Brendan thinks that the 3rd drainage pipe needs to go in per plan, we'll do it. Otherwise, if he doesn't have any concerns, then I'll keep you guys updated. But at least for me, my biggest concern was the slope in the back of the yard has, it's not stable right now. There were a lot of torrential downpours and there was sedimentation that has sloughed off the slope into the 100-foot buffer. I told Paragon they need to stabilize that, put an additional erosion control barrier at the toe of the slope, clean that area up, stabilize the slope, and keep me posted. So that was actually more of my concern rather than the drainage pipes. And then that's the longest update. Wampatuck, they have come up with a replication area. It is part of the same large BVW that we approved where the trail was going to be restored. It is further away from where that restoration work is. It's right off of the existing Wampatuck paved trail, but it is a part of the same BVW. Brad, I talked with Brad and friends at Wampatuck, Peter Williams, and I don't have any concerns with the replication area, but again, I will send it to you guys over email. If you guys have any questions or comments, just let me know. Penn Ocean Ledge, they finished the house. They're still working on hardscaping and landscaping. This was like a massive stormwater permit. It's a really big property. I haven't been there in a while, but I know they are putting together a COC. And 98 Howard Gleason, they have a stormwater permit currently on file. So that's the permit that they're going to request a COC for once they finish all the landscaping in the next couple weeks. You guys want me to go through other updates or?
Let's get it all taken care of. We don't want to.
All right.
Yeah.
This is a little bit of an old update, but I sent you guys emails about the tree work that National Grid was doing on Lampert's Lane, Cedar Street, and a few other roads. They have been very great with communication of letting me know whenever they cut trees or cut down trees, because even though they're exempt, they still have to give written notice per our bylaws. So they've been good with that. And if you guys ever have any questions about any of the trees, I'll send you guys any of their emails. I'm so sorry this keeps getting pushed off, but I can finalize the special conditions. I'm really trying to do it every meeting, but every meeting I get pushed off. So I'm sorry, guys. I will try to update that as soon as I can. Town meeting updates, you guys heard. Stormwater bylaw changes were approved. So yay. Thank you, Tom and Kathy, for being there. Appreciate it. Sorry it was a long night. And then grant applications, just to let you guys know, I'm working on a grant application for CZM that will hopefully, if I can secure it, one would be good for my resume, but two, it'll help us with revising the stormwater bylaws to really consider updates on how we can protect water quality. This is actually a big issue with stormwater, with climate resiliency, with a lot of other things. And so this would be the grant to do it. And I've reached out to Weston and Sampson to help us with that. The other part of the grant is actually coastal habitat water quality restoration. So we are looking at potentially assessing stormwater areas in town that are a problem and contributing adversely to water quality. And so we're actually working with Woods Hole as well to come up with kind of like a big comprehensive assessment plan, which includes updating the stormwater bylaws and assessing the town to see how we can update our stormwater management systems to, you know, be better for climate change and water quality and all that good stuff. Which will eventually allow us to open up the bigger book with any potential habitat restoration projects as well. So setting the stage with grants.
Excellent.
Yeah, I got sucked into grant world, and that's another reason why my time is being consumed. And then last but not least, recruitment updates. Just to let you guys know, I've been trying to email people to see who's interested in joining Concom. I am not successful. I have saved all the recruitment materials, Kathy and Tom. So at the next special town meeting in December, I will definitely set up a table. I'll, you know, but I guess if anyone has any ideas, Eric's given me a couple good suggestions of maybe putting some printed advertisements in local papers and magazines. At one point, I think we are going to do some sort of a recruitment video, and I don't like being on video, but I will do it. So I've already been working with the town communication specialist to kind of film me like doing vernal pool stuff. And then I was going to be interviewed for, you know, what's it like to be on Concom. I was hoping to maybe reach out to one or two of you if, you know, you could be in the video too and answer any questions, because he said a face-to-face thing is really helpful rather than just posting something on the town website that nobody looks at. And then they're also going to post it on social media too. So the video would go on social media, their Facebook, Instagram, whatever. But if anybody has any other ideas, please.
I think
let
you
me
and Chris should do an interview. I think you two would be great.
Which Chris?
This one there, McIntyre.
That Chris, okay.
Yeah. You need youth, you need youngsters.
Whatever you need, I'm there for you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Yeah, I'm, if you guys, and also, okay, someone's in the audience, but yeah, if you guys do see, if you talk to anybody who's interested, feel free to give them my contact information. I mean, I'm willing to talk to, you know, anybody at this point, so.
Okay.
As long as it's not a conflict of interest with the board, I'm willing to talk to anybody, so.
Right.
That's it.
Okay, well done, everybody.
Good job.
Yay,
We
Thank
we
you.
finished. It only took 3 hours.
Not bad.
good record.
It is what it is.
Tom, where'd you go? Where'd you go?
Definitely an improvement over 6 hours.
Ah,
What happened to your video?
Me?
Yeah.
I don't know. I have no idea what's wrong with my video.
You're not there.
froze a long time ago.
I know, it was like,
Yeah.
it cut out.
Yeah, I keep looking at here at.
Got
my
his
video, and it's
nightcap on and he's in his bed
supposed to
right
be
now.
working. Let's see.
Chris, Chris, Tom, I'd like to move to dismiss.
Yes, that's a great idea, Eric. So do we have a second to,
Yep.
Second.
okay, voice vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Yay.
Tom, great meeting. Thank you very much for your time.
Yes.
Thank you,
Well done.
Tom. Thank you, guys.
Welcome.
Have a great
Thank you.
Well
weekend.
done.
Oh, thanks, Tom.
Good weekend.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Good night.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Okay, good night,
Bye.
everyone.